You're strong.
I know.
It's okay. I've got you now.
Just like in the movies.
Welcome to SuperWonder Legacy, episode 31. The episode I've been looking forward to because we're finally talking about the book that we reference every single damn episode. I'm Jared. I'm here with Brit. What's up, Brit?
Hello, hello.
So finally we are talking about Superman Wonder Woman, the new 52 run. Woo!
Yes.
We're finally here, Brit.
Yes.
So what's interesting about this is that this is one of those books that they start not expecting it to do well, and oh boy, does it do well. And we'll talk about sales later.
Which to me is just kind of like, why wouldn't it have done well? If people have voiced, even from back in the day when it wasn't the internet and you can just do like fan commentary or whatever, send editor notes or whatever, and they asked for this pairing, so for anyone to be surprised, it's kind of like, are you really surprised?
No, well, obviously I'm not. And so let's go ahead and get started. By the way, before I start this is also, and I'll talk about this later because we have an entire section on the wasted opportunity. This would have been a kick-ass DCAMU movie. So that's what I'm going to say there. So we are going to go through the entire book. It's pretty much the same format as when we did Kingdom Come. So this book is written by the master team of Charles Soule and Tony S. Daniel. Any Star Wars fans, and Brit, this is particularly to you, if you like Charles Soule's comics, you should check out his Darth Vader run. That's all I'm gonna say on that. So
yeah, I definitely need to start, educating myself on
I
Star Wars.
have a lot of homework for you, Brit. I have a lot of homework. So, and just the covers on this series is like, first off, yeah, the covers are incredible on this, and they may be homaged in my upcoming project. Just wanted to put that in there. But so it starts off. We get, by the way, yes, this is the wraparound cover that I have signed by Charles Soule,
which is beautiful. I mean, it really shows that their world just coming together, and it really just how otherworldly their worlds are, even if there are like regular people, civilians like Lois, Jimmy, Kat. With Diana, it was Zola, and I would say Hesha, because she's a little bit of on the trying to be a little bit normal, with her dojo and being a doctor. So I would, say that. But other than that, this cast that they have and putting it together just makes so much sense. And seeing this as a poster, it's kind of like, okay, yeah, this should have been a movie.
This could have legit been the movie poster with Henry and Gal, 100%.
Right.
I don't know why I thought about that. Go ahead.
And the thing is, Tony, he actually he tweeted that out, saying that he wanted it was a good idea for WB or whatever to have a Superman and Wonder Woman movie with Henry and Gal. And of course, like Hornets or whatever, the antis, attacked him. And I think he deleted the tweet, I know, but I don't know if he I know a few times he had to deactivate his entire Twitter because of the attacks, but yeah,
I know what's up
even
now
he,
because I follow him.
yeah, this was years ago, but yeah, he knew that this was a great idea. And that's what I'm saying. A lot of people know that this is a great idea of these two being together. It's just the fact that you have such a vocal of antis, but they, of course, the vocal minority or whatever, and they just make themselves seem so big where it feels like you can't say anything, or else they are going to jump you, in the comments. They are going to say rude things, and they really got personal with Tony, especially the time when his wife was going through
Oh
her
God.
cancer. So they was like, saying stuff personal. And it was kind of like, oh my God, just for fictional characters and you're not wanting them to be together or, whatever. And it's kind of like, look at the divide DC is in now, because an idea that could have helped or something, now you don't have where, first of all, the Snyderverse is just, I would say the fans and WB just ruined it, as a whole.
Hmm.
And
And they
then
had
just
the opportunity to fix that when they released the Snyder Cut and saw the positive reaction to it.
right. And then you didn't let the characters develop as, as the relationships that they had in the comics. It's like you just didn't let it evolve to that. And it was very much restrictions for the characters, restrictions if a plot, didn't form correctly or whatever.
Superman couldn't use the black suit because they felt it was too dark.
Yeah, it was things like that that just really ruined any type of momentum, any type of idea. And so there you have fans that just pretty much said blocked an idea that maybe I will have to look for that tweet. I know someone's screen capped it. So I think that Tony was actually at Warner Studios at that time. So I
Hmm.
wonder if it was a pitch.
I'm sure it probably was. So continuing on. So first we start off, we see our power couple. They look completely badass in this image. I like how the lasso is kind of like wrapping around Superman here. There's a little bit of the sun coming out. And they're like, and he like takes her hand and he goes, "Are you ready?" And she goes, "Yes, I am." He goes, "Then
And
let's do this."
they just look like two powerful birds. Like I love the idea of them two flying and the colors just pop out. It's just so beautiful.
And this is what Jim Lee was talking about when he said you can do more, you can draw more interesting images with two people that are equally powered. And then just look at this with the lightning coming down, and this is actually amplified a little more when you realize that this Diana is the daughter of Zeus.
Yes, going back to what Jim Lee said, yeah, you don't have to have like the same pose of carrying like bridal style or whatever. Like this, the only pose that you can do.
Mm-hmm.
That is something that it's kind of like, how many times are you gonna drop the same thing of a falling shoe or whatever like that? But you can have these two as equals flying side by side. You can have them, I don't know, e they can even carry each other, Scott, if you wanted
Mm-hmm.
them to. But really, the most powerful thing is that they are flying side by side, and they don't have to hold each other or anything like
Mm-hmm.
that. It's just that they're just these individuals coming together. And yeah, the fact that with Diana, first, I love the idea of her having God mode and being
Yes.
able to being able to summon um the lightning bolts. Like
It
even
works
if
because she's the daughter of Zeus. Of course, she would have some lightning powers.
even if you don't like the origin, which like I said, I'm pretty much 50-50.
Mm-hmm.
I go, some instances I do the Zeus origin, the next I will do the Clay origin. Sometimes I mix them up.
Mm-hmm.
I honestly, I see potential in both. I see with the Zeus origin, it's a lot of drama there. it's
Mhm.
family dysfunction or whatever. You can play around with that. With the clay origin, it's very much more pure, and it's more when you want to really emphasize on Hippolyta. Both origins emphasize on her, but that one is just really more on the idea that she was barren, that she couldn't have a child. So that
Mhm.
pure, um, mother of creation and stuff, and the fact that you even lend more to the idea of Perez when he said that Hippolyta and Diana are the reincarnated souls of a mother and child, that were killed once. So it all just comes together. You just have to be creative, with the
Yeah.
origins.
Yeah, definitely. And so seeing here, so there's they're there to like stop a hurricane. And here's the thing that I really like about this. So he's good with storms. That's kind of his thing. And he goes, "I'm gonna go deal with the storm." And then he goes, "Wait a second, there's a plane that's in danger." And then Wonder Woman basically goes, "Call it." And see here's the good part: when they're together, she can go save this thing. He can focus on the storm because he knows she's gonna save the plane. Then he goes
Right.
down on, which I love, and that's why they work. It's here's the thing, and that's why here's the if they, let's say if they were like together in that Atlantis story we always reference, she could have saved these civilians while he saves Lois like a douche.
Right. Like
I'd have to say it that way.
exactly. They can It really showed the teamwork that they have, and like you said, the fact that one can she can, evacuate or whatever, he can fight the monster, or honestly, it will go switch. It will be Diana fighting the monster and Clark
Yeah,
helping the
well, most likely
civilians.
be to Diana be like, "Oh, he's mine. I got this
Yeah,
one."
so it will be like that. And it's not trying to one, saving the other. And that is the problem with Superman and Lois, is that he actually has to choose, am I going to save thousands, or am I going to save just this one person? And that's the thing of like, how are you a hero when you don't want to make that sacrifice?
Yeah, because you're gonna have to make that sacrifice eventually. You're telling me Superman's not prepared for this? It doesn't make sense. So then we
Right.
see what's causing the hurricane is this underwater like tsunami or tornado or something like that. And then he sees like this weird red glow. More on that later. And then we cut to like earlier. Clark is talking to Kat, and I believe they had just formed their little news site, and they don't really have a big story yet. So they're trying to like figure out how are they going to do that. And they meet Kat's boyfriend Aaron, and then we cut to Diana training with Hesha, and they're basically talking about Wonder Woman's mom being turned into snakes, the Amazons being turned into snakes, and Wonder Woman's mom being turned to stone. And then what's actually really nice, what I like about this is that Hesha goes, "Come on, you must have some good things in your life."
And then Diana says, like, yeah, I do. And she's all, um, there was one thing that I forgot to mention earlier,
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
was there was actually a an actress who did the voiceover for this first
Oh, yeah.
issue. I think her name was Lisa Berry.
Mhm.
And the way she gave such a voice to Diana, and the way that she pretty much vocalized this conversation, every time I read this conversation, her voice is in my head, and it's like so perfect.
Mhm.
And the emotion and enthusiasm of Hesha and Diana talking is like, yes, this is what we need. And
I love that.
I would, if you haven't heard it, I would definitely send it to you.
Yeah. Is that the group that also did the voice for the first volume of Justice League?
Um,
Because I
no.
think I know who you're talking about. And
Uh, for the movie or just
no,
the
no, for because I know there's a group that does motion comics for like a lot of the new 52 books, as a matter of fact, and they did one for that for Just League Origin, and I think they are going to do one for Power Couple.
No, this one was I would say this was years back. Like she
Okay.
hasn't
Mm-hmm.
she was going to do the whole volume, but I guess, she's an actress, so her schedule, busy
Mm-hmm.
and couldn't come back to it. So she just did the first issue, and I would really love her to get back to it because she's so good. So I would definitely
Yes.
find it and
Please
send it to
DM it.
you.
Please DM it.
Yeah,
So then, see, here's the thing that I really like about this first volume, and particularly about this first issue, how it juggles both stories of Clark and Diana, but they're all telling the exact same story. They're both are like dealing with like being private about their relationship. Diana actually thinking that because Diana being like this being of truth and embracing all you are, she's not used to having a secret identity. He is. So there was a little bit of like, I guess, tension there, which is another reason why Tomasi calling this the honeymoon phase is a load of heart garbage.
exactly. And again, Soul really knew how to balance this out. For anybody who says that this was just like Superman and his girlfriend Wonder Woman or something like that,
Mm-mm.
no. The very first issue is very well balanced. As a writer, that is how this is structured. And it flows so naturally. And you can feel the balance between their perspectives. And that is what we always say. It's a balanced perspective of Clark conflicted with his identity, you know, with the hiding. And then you have Diana that feels conflicted with how open she is. And also with um, Kat and Clark's venturing out from the Daily Planet. I loved this idea because Clark, he being stuck at the Daily Planet, you can have that for so long. Even if he is like he can be a freelancer, but the Daily Planet can be his home base. But he needs to go out and have a blog,
Plus, no one reads newspapers anymore, so it just
that
makes
too.
sense to like, okay, let's do an internet blog. That makes a lot of sense. That's how like
And it
CBR formed and all that stuff.
Yeah, and it really speaks to the modern world of, and to have Kat, because she is such the gossiper, to have her as this blogger that wants the exclusive, and especially that wants the celebrity news. In 2013, when this came out, that was very much modern day of everyone really hyped up to know, even back in the day, whatever, but people love celebrity gossip. And to have,
Particularly in this context where you have beings that have the powers of gods.
right, and then even within New 52 period, how they had News 52, when that was even a gossip thing or whatever.
Run by Ambush Bug, because of
Yeah,
course.
I mean, DC really had your modern day, like, you put the heroes in the modern world. And yes, it was dark, but at the same time, you saw that brightness. So for Jeff Johns or, anyone to say that Rebirth, like bringing back the light or bringing back this
The
love or
hope.
whatever.
Yeah, I'm like, no, no. Since when? Because here's the thing: this reflected the way in a lot of ways. Here's why people keep going back to these books because the new 52 is I think is going to be more timeless than even post crisis because I'm reading a bunch of post crisis books and a lot of it is very dated in terms of like the references, in terms of like even the technology. But with this, it's like, yeah, like you said, it's the modern world. You even have like a an analogous to like a scandal thing where like photos are leaked to the press and stuff. So
Right. It definitely felt like this book and New 52 as a whole definitely felt like it was in 2013, when this book came out.
Hmm.
And and that's what we need. Rebirth and whatever dawn of DC, whatever era DC is in right now, it feels dated. It feels like they still are stuck in the 90s. Even the Superman book, and I think that it was intentional with Williamson to have Superman in he was influenced by the animated show and everything, but it feels dated. And
Yeah,
then you have,
they're still at a newspaper place. Are you kidding me?
yeah, and the way that Superman acts, he can be old fashioned, but there's the thing with Post Crisis and New 52 Superman. New 52 Superman was our modern golden age, but
Yeah,
he had that young modern day swagger.
yeah.
You,
That's why I love Clark in this, but and even to a degree in Man of Steel and BVS because he has that swagger. Like he has a certain amount of confidence that I really appreciate.
yeah, he was 27. Okay, so New 52
Mhm.
ages are Clark is 27 and Diana is 23. So they felt like that mid, 20s couple, especially
Yeah.
Clark. Clark, he's old fashioned in a sense of, yeah, he lived on a farm and everything, but he still had that cool guy. Like, I keep referring to 2013 because this is when the book came out. So he still had that 2013, attitude.
Yeah.
And
Well, the other thing is like you can't blame him for having a bit of a swagger. I mean, look who he's dating.
exactly. And then Diana, even if she is from an island, she still had this modern girl, this foreign, uh, immigrant, and having her in London, you know, and
Mhm.
however, young girls in London act, I'm pretty sure uh Soul did some research and stuff just to see how would a girl in her early 20s would act. And he gave that, and you felt that, and especially um now, that I'm in my mid 20s, it just felt like, yeah, this is Diana, how she feels of trying to, find her place, of trying to, of basically just find her place without losing who she is because she is so open. That's exactly how, girls in reality feel.
And that is exactly why this couple works because they're both trying to find their place. Hell, Justice League 12 basically indicated that. So continuing on, she catches a plane, and again, the other thing I love about Tony Daniel when he draws her as the perfect mix of like muscularity, but also femininity.
Yes, his idea for Diana was to be like a tennis player.
Yeah, that works because you do have to have Wonder Woman be a little buff because she's a warrior. In fact, that was one of the criticisms Gal Gadot got when she was cast as Wonder Woman until she actually bulked up for the role. It's almost like judging before you actually get the product is a bad idea. Continuing on, and then Clark is like launched through the plane out of nowhere, and she's like, "The heck just happened?" So,
Yeah,
so Clark's, he's basically like, "I'm okay. Get the pilots out of here. I'm dealing with something right now." And then she gets like shot out of the sky, and I'm like, "Okay." And then we cut to London, and that's the other thing I like about this book. They have these nice, peaceful moments, and I like how like you could see where the wind is blowing, but to a certain degree, it's kind of like is the wind blowing because he just floated from behind her?
I think so. I think that, well, it seemed like it is a little, hmm, that's a good question because
It's a
now,
little, but it's a little, it could go either way. I think.
oh, another thing, going back, Aaron Lord, I think that's Max Lord's son.
Who's Aaron Lord? Where's that?
Aaron Lord is Kat's boyfriend.
Oh.
See, the plot thread, if Aaron Lord is Max Lord's son, you know, how you modernize that for Aaron to be like the new Max Lord, if that was going to be a thread later on and maybe do a redo of Sacrifice. Like,
Charles, please come on the show so we can ask you these questions.
yes, I just thought about that. Like, I saw his name, and that was the idea. I believe it was for him to be his some related to Max Lord. But now that I think about it, and of course the story that we're doing, it's kind of like, yeah, it must have been like the idea of a Sacrifice redo.
Yeah. So he brings her a flower. And the thing about Clark is that they could have done this really stereotypically where he brings her a bouquet. But the thing about it is that he brings her a very special flower from his fortress. And I love this line where he goes, it's beautiful and a little strange. It made me think of
Think
you.
of
And then
you.
Diana goes, oh, Clark, if I wanted smooth, I'd be with Hal Jordan.
So she basically was like, that was a little corny, but it was, which I mean, he's a writer, so he tries to be poetic, you
Hmm.
know, but it was a little corny. And
Hmm.
that's the thing. He the way that he's drawn, like I said, he's drawn with swagger, but when he talks and sometimes tries to be romantic, whatever, he can get a little corny and it can be cute. That is how Superman Clark Kent is supposed to be. Not the overly simplistic, okay, just because he's from a farm doesn't mean he has to act like this big oaf, like that, you know,
Not a big
timid,
galoot is
cowardly.
what you're telling me.
Exactly. The galoot, honestly, please no. You know, that the stereotypes that they give Superman and Wonder Woman, it oversimplifies them and it makes them just not very appealing as characters. And Superman is not an an appealing character, right? At least to me, because this era or
Well,
whatever,
sales wise, it backs you up, Brit.
true. But you know, what do I know when Twitter X can say otherwise, and apparently, you know, they know better.
Well, yeah, but and the other thing I like about this is the conversation here because Clark goes because she asks him, "Hey, you have so many great things in that fortress. Have you ever considered like bringing people there?" And she goes, "Nah, it's really more like my little secret, and it's one some secrets you really have to keep." And then she goes, "Like us." And then he goes, "No, it's really like that one I want to keep." It's kind of like he knows he doesn't have to, but what he's really telling her is that I want this to be just between us because as a journalist, he knows what's going to happen if it leaks out that they're together.
Right. It's like, and this conversation is so mature because they are like, you're really getting the balance of their, again, it's a whole thing about their perspective. Clark, he hides things because that is how he grew up. He grew up to hide his powers, hide he's not actually from Earth. Um, grew up just that was pretty much instilled in him. And that's the thing about, I mean, I guess the kids were trying to protect him, and you understand that, but at the same time, they could have said, like, as you get older, you know, you can open up a little bit more, not just hide and feel like you have to hide even as you get older. That is the one thing that it keeps with any iteration of the Kents. It feels like they want Clark to just, you know, hide for the rest of his life or something like that. And
Mhm.
that's something that, you know, as a parent, that and especially with the character that Superman is supposed to be, that is not exactly the message that you want to give kids. So
No,
I would,
exactly.
you know, so I would think that, like I said, the Kents at some point will say, you know, as you get older, we would like for you to open up a little bit more. Now, the Kents in the New 52 were were deceased, but before, they died, they could have still had that kind of talk with Clark as, growing up in high school or something like that. Post crisis, Clark, he had his parents,
Mhm.
and it still felt like they coddled him. They pet him too much. And again, he hid so much that he didn't grow up to actually be the man that he's supposed to be. Because as a grown person, yes, you do supposed to go, or you can go to your parents for advice. But when Superman was constantly going back to his parents for the smallest of things, like he couldn't make his own decisions and had to be handheld, either from the Kents or Lois, it was like, no, you aren't the inspiration. And that's what comes about in when Batman said, the last time you
Yeah, I
inspire
love that
someone
line.
is when you were dead. So yeah, you see this conflict that Clark has of all feeling like he has to hide certain things. And for the first time of him just openly and so fast, he wants to open up to Diana. And he pretty much, we see as the story progresses that he does open up, but we also see his point of view now of why he hides because, yeah, his world is dangerous.
It's almost like he has a character arc. Moving on,
Right.
as we and I like where Wonder Woman goes. I have a gift for you too. So you're what? So you're the strongest person on Earth. Dot dot dot. Or at least one of them, because I'm here. Again, I love the dialogue between these two. And she's like, "I want to teach you how to fight," and I'm like, "Oh, okay, that's actually really cool." So what I like here is that he, it's like an equal reaction, if you will, because he gives her a gift from basically his culture. She gives him a gift from her culture. So it's really cool seeing these two like opening up to each other, which is why, again, this is why it works because they can be who they really are around each other.
Right. And it's also kind of uh, like a kind of a gender swap because Clark is like being the softie and bringing her a flower, and then Diana is being like the more, aggressive and
The
wanting to teach
warrior.
him how to, the warrior, yeah, teaching him how to fight. And what I also love is that she doesn't, a lot of detractors, they have this idea that Diana only cares or um the Superman and Wonder Woman relationship is only about power or strength or whatever like that. But just like in Justice League 12, when it's like black and white, it says it right there. They aren't gods. They don't even like, to be referred to as such. They don't like, just the idea. And especially Diana, because she know how the gods are. So with the strength, she's saying that you have all this strength, whatever, but what if you didn't? And you need to learn how to fight. You need to learn how to hone in, just your natural abilities without the strength. And then just the idea of them playfully training and Diana taking the lead to train him, you know, that is something that we really missed out on. But just the idea of that coming into play was really nice.
Yeah, and I really love this. It's really cool. And then we get like mail call at Clark Catropolis. What's kind of funny is that the mail guy brings her the mail and she goes, just put it on the pile, Brian. If it were important, they would have sent me an email." Which again is such a great moment because it's like basically saying no one reads newspapers or letters anymore. They get everything through the internet. It's like Charles
Right.
Soule is saying, "This is why this works." And then we get this
Right.
dope as hell image of Wonder Woman tearing the gun off a ship. And I'm just, again, what Tony Daniel excels at is showing the grit, raw power of these gods. Like, wow.
Yeah, and just the facial expressions, the
Yeah.
colors is are beautiful. And yeah, just to show that Diana is in equal power of with Clark, because it's always this back and forth thing too with fans saying, "Oh, she's weaker," maybe a little bit, but at the same time,
Actually, no. Here's why she's stronger. If you were going on the assumption that Clark has a no kill rule, Wonder Woman doesn't.
right. The thing is, Diana doesn't give up,
Mm-hmm.
and given that
Power of
she
Babel.
is right, and even if she is the daughter of Zeus or the clay origin gifted by the gods, it doesn't matter. She was still gifted in some way by gods. And Clark is not as powerful as the gods. Like,
Magic.
of and that too, magic is one of his weaknesses. So the whole basically logic goes out the window a lot of times, especially for these writers, because you have Clark. He may be God-like, God. What Diana calls him, she says that he's a god in his own right. He's the sun god because, of course, getting power for the
Yeah,
sun.
Power from the Sun. This was
But
actually a really good moment from the Justice League War animated movie that wasn't in the comic. Is when they're getting their awards, and Wonder Woman is like each a god in their own right, and she goes down each member of the Justice League, and then there's this great line where Superman goes, "And what about me?" And then Wonder Woman goes, "You are unlike anything I've ever seen, Superman." And they stare at each other, and there's Steve in the middle stewing. I love that
right,
animated movie for that reason. That one frame is so good.
right, and exactly that line really says that Clark isn't a god, but he isn't mortal, of course, and he's an alien, he's a Kryptonian, but even how do you define a Kryptonian? And the one thing that I saw earlier was um it was a tweet of from a Clovis fan, and they say that Superman is a sun god and Lois is a storyteller. First of all, calling her a storyteller, it it sounds like you're calling her a liar, which sometimes
Which
she
she
is.
is, so thank you for admitting that.
So trying to make this seem like some grand love story or whatever, saying the sun god and the storyteller, I don't know. That just seems kind of, uh, it's boring. And it
Yeah,
doesn't really make sense. The sun god and the moon goddess, yes, that is an
that makes a lot
actual
more
love
sense.
story.
Plus, that even worse because the sun is the opposite of the moon or something like that. So
Yeah,
then, so then with this book, it does something that completely blew my mind the first time I read this. Something lands behind Diana. She turns around thinking it's Clark, but it's Doomsday. And to be clear up to people how massive this was Doomsday's first appearance in the New 52. This wasn't like the death of Superman happened, then he came back. No, no, no. This is the first appear. And then first off, he's clamped some people in half with his arm. And again, this is when I tell people, are you sure comic books are for kids?
right. Now, okay, so that's what confused me because so the thing with New 52 was you had this reboot and you felt like, some things were to be kept
Mm-hmm.
and some things a complete clean slate. Superman and Wonder Woman was supposed to be a complete
Clean
clean
slate.
slate. But you have writers and some editors that wanted to keep something
Jurgens.
of, yeah. And so actually, even though this is Doomsday's first appearance within the New 52, it was still referenced that Clark has seen Doomsday and kind of fought him a little bit before, and it
Well, the
still
Phantom
doesn't
Zone
really.
thing, right?
That's what confused me because it's kind of like he wants to say that he died once with fighting Doomsday, but he didn't. So I'm like, that is something that and like that form of Doomsday that killed him was like the level one, and then from Super Doomed, it was like the actual, powerful form. So I don't know. This is something, the whole Doomsday Death of Superman um story, they really wanted to keep in. And you like, I don't know, you just ruin the whole idea of something new when you want him to, go back and say, well, I did fight him one time, then he came
Yeah.
back.
Well, remember, according to DC, the only time Superman has ever inspired people is when he was dead. So they have to keep rubbing that in his face. So then we get Wonder Woman versus Doomsday, which, here's the thing, we don't see that often in continuity. So it's actually really cool. And it's also cool to see the way if you're somehow, this is your first comic and you don't know how powerful Doomsday is, he actually draws blood from Wonder Woman. That is significant. Not only that, he breaks her freaking arm. And we get that in issue 2. I mean, look at that. She actually says her arms are broken.
Yeah, oh, well, going back to the fight.
Mhm.
First the fight, and then the red and black
Oh,
images
yeah.
of them talking. That is like
And being
really
intimate.
showing, yeah, it's showing the brutality, but at the same time the intimacy, and just S- Soul really knew how to balance this out. He
Mhm.
balanced the softness and the the quiet moments with the action, and then put it together in one spread. It just seems so, I don't know how to say it, but I've never actually seen that work. Like, it really works here.
You have to be really creative to do it. By the way, speaking of facial expressions, this facial expression right here, I could hear in BVS Gal Gadot screaming as she charged Doomsdays in this image right here. So I'm like, I really appreciate that. Snyderverse for life. And then again, he draws blood on Wonder Woman. That is like the biggest, like, oh boy. And then he just vanishes. And this will be like, it's a this is the other thing I like about Volume 1. It's a mystery that kind of plays out throughout the entire thing. So if you're following it, you pick up on the breadcrumbs. And then obviously Superman shows up and saves everyone. And then her arm's healing because she's got the gods. And I like how she describes Doomsday to Clark, and he's like, wait, that's not possible. And then we find out here, the way I think they explain it is that, so Doomsday happened on Krypton, and I think he was the creator of I think he was created actually by Clark's mom, if I remember correctly. And then he was too like uncontrollable, so they threw him in the Phantom Zone, and that's probably why he knows who Doomsday is, because ostensibly he would have like studied Kryptonian culture.
Okay, now that makes more sense than trying to say the death of Superman actually happened,
Because
somewhere, somehow.
there's no way it happened in this universe.
Yeah, that makes way more sense. And also, it with um with the part of Clark saving everyone, honestly, again, it was equal. It showed
Mhm.
equal. Diana getting her arms broken, I mean, she still fought Doomsday and she's still alive. That's the
Mhm.
thing. She
She's
just
still
got her
alive.
arms
She
broken.
survived a fight with Doomsday. That's just
Exactly.
big.
So for anyone who says that like Clark saved her, no, he didn't, because it's not like he was, picking her up or something like that. He just picked up the ship, and by the time Clark picked up the ship, it Doomsday had actually disappeared. So for um again, the detractors to read, and you remember, I think it was on Twitter when you and Jordan was going back and forth with someone that was basically hate reading the volume and nitpicking,
Oh yes.
and really like, okay, that did not happen. Like, it's very different when you read a book and it has like no images. So of course, in your mind, unless it's like very detailed, you can have an image in your head and you go by that. But comic books are a visual.
Mhm.
And the fact that you have the visual right in your face and you still misinterpret it is like, okay, yeah, you're just hating for no reason. So with that whole fight, for any Wonder Woman fan to have an issue with it, it's really just hating. Like, she survived, she fought, and she was healed within a matter of minutes, you know? She
Yeah, because again, daughter of Zeus.
Yeah. And then also when she says that Clark is more than the monster, that Diana, she says that she has fought, gods and monsters, but Clark's strength is not his physical, um, his physical strength. It's always the strength in his heart, and she, emphasize, and she sees him as one man, as Clark, Cal, and Superman. And that's the thing that's always ignored, is that Diana, she doesn't just see Superman or the Kryptonian or whatever. She sees the whole person.
Yes, that's
And
why it works.
yeah, and again with Lois, it's just always, you're just Clark,
She only sees
or
the Clark because she even still calls him Smallville, and it really annoys me after a while. Continuing on, the other thing I like, because it's the Phantom Zone projector, it's not like he's watching a home movie. Doomsday can see him, and they're like having a staring contest as Diana watches. So that's just, it's these small details that I really really like. And again, this is why this is like, I've said this before. This is like my favorite Superman and or Wonder Woman book, because they have these cool moments in there that I'm like, okay, I want this to be a movie. And then I love this where she's like, where he's like, I don't know if I can handle him, Diana, and goes, Clark. And this is another reason why Diana works for Clark. She goes, "You're not gonna face him alone. I'm gonna be there right with you." As she puts her hand, as she does the Crisis on Infinite Earths Part One hand over chest thing.
yes. This is what the quote I was talking about. Just to know that she can be equally side by side with him fighting, and the sacrifice that is no hesitation. That shows the partnership that they have. And
They
again,
could have
if you
had
have a
this in
pro
the animated movie. Just
right, I
saying.
mean,
Even if they didn't want to do Super Doomed, they could have kept the movie the same, but done the Wonder Woman instead of Lois route and told it in a new way.
but no, you have people who prefer the old and
And
just
somehow think that Lois played a big role in the death of Superman story, the death part. And I'm like, even my friend that's like a hardcore Lois, I told him that excuse, and he goes, "No, she wasn't."
yeah, the revisionisms, and they did a lot of that during this time
Let me put it
of
this way: when Sam told me that was the justification, in my obviously I was very respectful because Sam's a friend and everything like that. But when in my head I was like,
no.
let me put it this way: if you plugged a TV into my head and put on the show, it'd be all bleeps. I was like, that's it. That's the justification for it. I'm like, when you
Exactly.
could
And
have had, again, you could have literally had that. It's not like it changes. You could even have Wonder Woman get really like injured, and you could do the same thing where he's about to stab her with the spike. That's when he like rockets forward and like hits the head. That would have worked.
yeah, but I mean, if your justification is just, first of all, it's not a good justification when it's not even within the story itself.
Mm-hmm.
So, and really, like I said, James Tucker, he had his agenda of wanting to revert back to pre 52 type stories, post crisis stories, and just the idea that he pretty much wanted to do Action 600, even though, I mean, he already had that idea that Clark and Diana had been dating. Um, but I think Sam did say that New 52 was forced on them, which again, as professionals, um, nothing is forced on you. As the producers of uh the animated department, and with working together and trying to have this cohesive type, medium, and you can't have this double standard or be hypocritical of what you want to be synergized, but then something that I guess you don't like now trying to have synergy and everything is a bad thing.
How's that
So
working for you, WB? But
right. So
it really annoys me, and it's the same thing of like writers and artists of the new 52 who are told to write and draw these characters the some way, and they go, well, I don't want to do that. And I'm like, then you're not working for this company. This is the way these characters are. Yeah, you have to abide by it.
right. So so yeah, so with the animated universe, to wrap that up, he basically wanted to, which I am glad he wasn't able to do Action 600, because that was just so, it was honestly dumb, because it really made Clark look like, to say that Diana is out of his league. The awkward kiss, it's kind of like, how can you have an awkward kiss and then, but they had their like official kiss in Throne of Atlantis. So yeah, the whole revisionisms and doing stuff off camera or off screen, it didn't work. And yeah, now look at the place that they're in now, where a lot of people do not invest in these animated movies anymore.
If anything, they pirate them. But continuing on, then we get my favorite part of this entire book. This will always be one of my favorite parts. So then we get the I'm going to meet her family thing. And I like Hephaestus' way of testing Clark. He swings a hammer at him to see how strong he is, and Clark just catches it. He's like, that all you got? But I love the way this is drawn, because you see like all the wind. Clark's hair is like swept back. Again, masterful art. And then my absolute favorite thing. But well, also first, they go to Hephaestus to build them a weapon that can take out Doomsday. So there is that. Then the God of the Sun shows up. And I really want this to be in an animated movie or a live action movie at some point. So go ahead.
How can you like not see the potential of this? Like, you have a sun god, quote unquote, in his own right, and then you have the literal sun god going head to head. Like, who wouldn't want to see this live action or in animation? And it just makes no sense how DCW, really leaves such creative ideas on the table to collect dust. And then you wonder why, again, people don't invest in certain things, don't care for it, when you would rather just keep being lazy and not take the risk, when the risks have shown that they can be your moneymaker.
Thank you, Didio. But also, here's what this part of the chapter of the book does really well. It homages that issue 1 cover wraparound, because it's showing that their worlds combine and actually integrate together very well. And then also you find out that Diana had told her family about them. And then obviously Apollo is being a big a-hole. And he even makes disparaging comments about Diana after like slapping him aside. And actually, I want to read this because this is really good. So Clark goes, "You are a god, correct? That's not just some affectation." And then Apollo goes, "Your ignorance astounds. Yes, mortal, I am a god." This is my god voice. "I am Apollo, god of the sun and ruler of Mount Olympus." And then Superman goes, "Good, glad to hear that." And then Apollo goes, "Why in the world would you say such foolish things?" "Because if you speak to Diana like that again, I'm going to hit you." Now, most of the time when I hit someone, I can't go all out. I have to hold back. But since you're a god, I can hit you as hard as I want. And this reminds me of in Justice League Unlimited, where Clark goes, "I live in a world made of cardboard, but you can take it. So let's go, bro." I just freaking love this. This is the moment that made me love New 52 Superman, where he goes, "I'm going to punch you. And I don't have to hold back. So brace yourselves." And then we get to Kat. She's kind of upset with Clark because, unbeknownst to her, he's being Superman, but she thinks he's slacking because he's supposed to be the one out trying to find stories for their news article. And then she calls Aaron Lord. Oh, this won't turn out bad at all. And then Clark lands in the lava pits. And then I love Diana. She goes, "You're dead." And then he goes, "Oh, please." And then Superman goes, "No, Diana, let me." And he punches him. Then Apollo goes, "You dare? I am the sun." And blasts Superman with sunlight. To which he goes, "How?" And Superman goes, "You hit me with sunlight? You don't know that much about me, do you?" And then punches him through the volcano. This was the greatest Superman moment, in my opinion, of all time. And then to cap it off, they didn't have to do this, but they did it so well. And then Clark goes, "Before you say anything, I know you could have handled yourself." And then Diana goes, "True, but I enjoyed watching it all the more." And I'm like, dang, this is good dialogue.
Yeah, because it's kind of like, okay, of course, Clark, as the protective boyfriend, he wants to defend Diana, but he knows at the same time she can, defend herself. It's fine. But because he respected her and, knew that she wasn't a damsel, she, respected him and kind of like fell in love with him all over again. It seemed like the fact that he, like I said, respected her. And yeah, she thinks that it's kind of sexy to
That's what,
you
and by
know
the way, I could almost hear a Wilhelm scream as Apollo flies out of the volcano. Like, that's what I would
and
do if I
then
were to turn this into a movie. Be like, "Ah!"
and the and the fact that Tony, like, the detail of the art and
Yes.
drawing a tiny Apollo flying up
It's
out
just
the
a
volcano.
tiny ant getting washed out. That's why I'm like, One Piece. This
It's like,
is why I freaking love this book, because it gives so many great moments.
and the fact that you can put this, like, you can really adapt this one, one-on-one, and just basically every panel, it has a moment where it's the facial expressions, the seriousness of the scene, or even the funny moments. And this is a very funny moment.
It's
Have
so
that in the
good.
animated movie, and you can have like the best movie.
Yes, with the Wilhelm scream. Please, for the love of gods, keep the Wilhelm scream. That would be so great. And watch, I would love if Clark goes, "I think I made a god bleed." That'd be so good. And then we cut to the Sahara Desert, and a portal opens, and these like herdsmen are like shellacked. And then General Zod emerges. Lois's true love. Yes, I'm gonna be that dude. Zois for life. Come on, DC. So
I mean, the brutality and the, like, very graphic,
yeah,
death scenes.
it's so
Yeah,
good.
they didn't hold back at all. And
No,
and another thing with the Apollo fight is that
ooh,
Clark,
more,
he
more.
he also feels like, right, he doesn't have to hold back. And that's the thing with post-crisis Superman, is that even with knowing that he doesn't have to hold back, he holds back,
Because
and
he's like he's still my girlfriend's brother.
yeah, he would say something like that. And it's kind of like, that's so lame. But this Clark, with the backbone, with the golden age, like, I don't care type mentality, this kind of rough around the edges a little bit. Yeah, he's like, I'm going to punch you. And,
I'm gonna murder your ass, bro.
yeah, that is the kind of Superman
It's
that you
so
need.
good.
Yes, he's very humble. He's very humbled. He's very respectful. But at the same time, when it's necessary, he will kick your ass, and
And
that is
I
what we
could
need.
so hear Henry Cavill saying these lines. That's what makes this so good. I could totally see him going up to a god. First off, I could totally see him saying, "You don't know that much about me, do you?" I just freaking love it. And then how he has him glowing like Clark becomes the sun god now, the way he's glowing. And I'm like, this is just so freaking awesome. And by the way, you know what's kind of funny? Whoever was designing the costumes for Zod and Feora and Man of Steel was obviously inspired by this, because this looks eerily like Man of Steel. And not
I
that I'm
think it was the other
complaining.
way. I think it was the other way around. I think
Okay.
Man of Steel did come out before
Okay.
um this, and the inspiration for the comic designs
Thank you,
was
Tony
Man of Steel.
Daniel, for further bringing in the Snyderverse into DC Comics continuity. Because I swear, you know, it's kind of funny. First, Tom King had like Batman in the Nightmare suit. Jeff Johns had someone in on top of the BVS Batmobile. They changed Steppenwolf's design in the comics to be the Snyderverse Steppenwolf, and this. And I'm like, and people say that Zack Snyder didn't have an influence on DC. Wow. So then we cut to Cat Grant. She gets a USB drive. She plugs into the computer, then goes, whoa. And then we get another fantastic moment. So Batman's on the watchtower, and Clark is trying to like burn off all this extra sunlight. And what's interesting about this is that Bruce says something very interesting that kind of throws a wrench into the whole he needs Lois to be grounded argument, when he goes, Clark, I'll keep it on here because these characters are speaking. He goes, Clark, there's a reason why of all of the Justice Leaguers, I've always felt comfortable working with you. And then he goes, because I can punch the moon to dust. And he goes, no, because I know you'd never do that. Whether or not regardless of all the powers you have, you still see yourself as a human being. You still see Earth as your home, no matter what. To you, you probably just see yourself as a regular human being that happens to have powers. And I'm like, thank you so much, Charles. I'm going to use that, and I have used that in every single Clovis debate I've ever been involved in.
Right. Now, see, if you show that to them, to any of the detractors, whatever, they will swear, well, that isn't canon or something like that, or they'll,
According to
you
DC
know,
after Death Metal, it's all canon.
they don't believe that. They still, the fact that it was retconned in Reborn, or whatever.
But later retcon back, though, in the Wonder Woman book. That's the thing.
Yeah.
That's what they don't realize. This is how I know they're not reading the books, because I'm like, it was retcon back, guys. And by the way, still all canon. And here's how I know that, because and I did this, Brit, on my when I did Under Two Capes, and I was talking about my pet peeves. I put up the panel from Death Metal, and it's Wonder Woman saying, all of our histories become one history. And it's like the strands of the lasso are like going through everyone's head. All of a sudden they remember everything. So I'm like, by that book, everything is canon. Suck it. And then I was like, then I was lofted on the shoulders of every Super Wonder shipper, because I just defeated the enemy. So moving on. Then I also love this. So again, they like basically alternate between Clark and Diana really well. And you see Diana, she's trying to like integrate more to Clark's world now, when she's at the mall and she's trying to buy him a Christmas present, even though she has basically she doesn't celebrate Christmas.
Yeah, I think she does solstice. So yeah, and Hesha makes up a good point. That it does show the differences of Clark and Diana, that he celebrates a certain holiday and she doesn't. But that something like that really doesn't make or break a relationship, because so many people, and you have these diverse interracial or relationships in the real world, and you blend together. My mother, her coworker, she it was a blended family, and interracial wedding relationship, and they had two weddings, to celebrate both cultures. And it was no problem. It was like we are bringing it all together. And it was such a beautiful thing to see that even with having two different cultures, but bringing it together, you create something new. And that is what this relationship is about, is that, yeah, they are from two different worlds, but instead of compromising of like one, loses themselves just to wholly, you know, go to one side. They're just bringing it all together.
Mhm.
And you can also see the contrast again from Clark's conversation with Bruce and Diana's conversation with Hesha, is that still Diana is still the more open one because
Mhm.
she is willing to, learn, even though she's stubborn and she doesn't want to admit that she doesn't know exactly what she's doing to, get a gift for him for Christmas, but she still is so open to try. While Clark, he still feels like he wants to hide this idea, this problem that he has of, being struck by the sunlight, that scared him. And he doesn't want to show Diana that he's afraid. But at the same time, he does, of course, like you said earlier, it's a character arc. So we see him, opening up a little bit more.
Yeah, and even with this also shows why Diana works with Clark, because even though, like, yeah, she doesn't necessarily care about all this stuff, she's doing it for him because the thing about Wonder Woman with Superman is because she's like devoted to truth, she respects all that makes him a thing because she loves him as Clark and Superman, and she already hangs out with him plenty as Superman, but she's doing more also Clark Kent things too, as opposed to Lois, who encourages him to be more the Clark Kent thing, and that's why this works better than Chloe's. And then again, we get this conversation. It also works. So basically, Batman is Clark's wingman. So I'm like, yes, that's what it should be. Batman, Superman, not world's finest, world wingmen.
Yeah, and also again, it's pointing out that Clark and Diana are different. It's
Mhm.
like she is again more open. She's, has her culture. Clark, even though I don't like again simplifying him as just a farm boy,
Yeah.
he's still much more than that. It's still just that idea though, is that yeah, acknowledge that they are of different cultures, of, different backgrounds, but it can still work.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why with work, it can work. Well, that rhymed, and that was totally by accident. And then we get General Zod, and he like paints blood on his face, and I'm like, that's just so badass. That's the other thing about this. I love Zod in this because this dude is like, help me, and then he just stomps on him, and I'm like, and then he just takes off, obviously not knowing his power, he has powers or anything, and then he's attacked by the JLA. Now, for those of you that don't know, okay, so what happened was in the new 52. Amanda Waller and Steve Trevor came up with a Justice League of their own, to quote a crappy version of Justice League. And the intent of it was, well, actually, the inspiration for it was they found out that Clark and Diana were together. So I know it's a weak sauce reason to form an anti-Justice League, but I guess it is nice to see like Hawkman and Martian Manhunter, though.
But also Steve is like the bitter ex. So
Yeah,
of course he'll form a team, against Clark especially. But I mean, forming a team against Diana is just kind of like, yeah, that's very much a bitter ex.
that was
And
the best moment in Trinity War where or the main Justice League find out about the JLA, and one woman goes to Steve Trevor and she goes, "Are you kidding me? You didn't trust me?" And I'm like, "Thank you."
but it's also again, it's showing that like Steve in it if he isn't with Diana or something, or if she isn't like doing what he says, he would go against her in a sense of essentially either imprisonment, or he would be okay with her like getting injured or killed or something like that.
Plus,
Just because
he
he
kind
is,
of Plus, he kind of talked behind her back to Waller and says, "Don't worry, she'll break his heart. It's what she does." And I'm like, "Are you? What an a-hole thing to say."
Yeah, so with this whole trying to be like this true love type thing with Steve or even Lois, of how Steve and Lois talk about Clark and Diana in such condescending ways. How is that love? How does that, how can you actually root for them? And of
And
course they,
here's the answer, Brit. It's not real love. Moving on. The JLA fights on, and Zod completely pummels them. And I like where Hawkman hits Zod with the base, but it does nothing. And he's like, And then Wonder Woman shows me, and I like how like awkward is. Diane's like, "Hello, Steve," and then he's like, "Diana," and I love Steve is so bitter toward Clark for obvious reasons. The way he gets in his face and he goes, "Oh, I love where he goes. I checked out and found these guys fighting. You wouldn't know anything about that, would you?" And you can tell that like Diana's like, men.
yeah, that whole thing is very much just, I mean, Steve started it. He's not professional at all. And you have Zod murdering folks. He has blood all over his face, and then you're worried about like your your ex or whatever, her current boyfriend. It's just so, and it's so childish.
Yeah, that's Stephen Lowe's for you. And I like how Zod plays the good person. He's like, "Yeah, I'm Kryptonian. Oh, you wear the House of L. That's so cool. Hello, Cal." And then I like where Steve Trevor says, "Hey, we'll house him in Argus and everything like that." And the Superman goes, "No, I know what it's like to be housed by Argus. Pass." Making a reference to the Grant Morrison book, which I love it so much. And I'm like, this is creating a cohesive continuity. I'm loving this. And I like the idea of Superman being tortured by the government. Here's why. Because it makes it all the more like he has every reason to hate us, but he still saves us.
Right. I don't, again, post-crisis with coming from, well, first, with this book, Charles respected, even if he didn't get the respect, he respected every other writer and their stories, and he tried to bring it all together, to reference certain things, to try to place this book in where, where is it set? And that is something that DC doesn't have right now, or hasn't had,
Continuity.
and connectivity. They
Yeah.
just don't have that. And now you have where the stories, they do have these editor notes, but it still doesn't make sense. And they try to place this, somewhere, especially with John. Like nothing makes sense anymore because of him. But it's even worse that so many of these books are isolated now. And so with trying to have like right now with the Dawn of DC, this whole Waller thing and this whole big event across all these books, but nothing makes sense. Like, how is this going on? But then you have something else going on here, and you say, well, this is now before, or this is now after what happened in this book. And
Oh my
then you
gosh.
have like who was it? Aquaman and Aquaman's daughter, Andy. I think she's still a baby after like 3 years. So it's kind of like, okay, if John
How
was,
much time has passed by?
yeah, it makes it seem, actually she was a baby in one issue, and then in like the very next she was like 3 years old. So
Oh
it's kind of
God.
yeah, so it's kind of like they're like 3 years. I always say when they have like, especially with John, they basically age the kids in dog years.
Well, because he's Kryptonian, but still, it doesn't really work that well, and it's kind of really like kind of annoying.
Yeah.
I really don't get it. By the way, another thing I will bring up about Tony's art, I like the use of shadows, particularly how this is basically just a silhouette of Clark, and then you have like the shadows over his face as he remembers being tortured, and I'm just like, this is fantastic art. I freaking love this so much.
Yeah, and then Steve is still just being an a-hole. I mean,
And he's
just
so small too. I love this. Hey Diana, for old time's sake. He goes, no, I'm sorry. I'm with Superman on this one. And she's basically saying, I'm with Superman. Respect that.
and then she says that it's not personal. Like she's trying to be professional, and but the fact that that was also a swipe that Steve is again trying to manipulate her
Mhm.
and like trying to use that even if she did have feelings for him as more than a friend, or even if just being a friend now, it's like that is what Steve was trying to use. And that has always been Steve's thing of manipulating Diana, gaslighting her, and putting guilt trips on her since pretty much the when Marston left the book and when he passed too, that is when but it was the Bronze Age. That is when the Wonder Woman, her being the, this icon of feminism and pretty much controlling, in a sense, the situation of her relationship with Steve and Steve chasing after her, it changed to where she became, chasing after him and him being the macho and again with the manipulation and the guilt trip. And that is what the new 52 showed. Yes, they de-aged him to be a love interest, but it was very toxic. It was very still possessive and like you call him a stalker and stuff like that. And
Yeah.
and again, Charles, he's not downing Steve. This is his characterization. And for anyone to even think that that's, what's happening in this book, no. Now, that's
See,
totally different.
this is what happens when you have a good writer as opposed to Tomasi. Because remember, Tomasi, basic character, assassinated Diana to hold up his ship. Charles Soule could have done
Exactly.
that too, but he's like,
And
no, no,
Rucka.
no, 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 no. This is called being professional.
Right, and Rucka. Tomasi, Rucka, and
Oh
Jargon.
yeah,
Diana was used as a mouthpiece, and then she threw her own relationship under the bus with Rucka, saying that she's not good with romance and stuff like that. So it's like if she isn't good with romance, why is she with Steve?
I
That
know.
you know. And then for Clark with Tomasi saying that Diana didn't have an award, a man-made award. So
Yeah.
that's why he didn't marry her. And then for Jurgens to have Diana say that, you know, Lois and Clark feels true or whatever.
Yeah, immediately that I legit threw the issue across the room. I'm like, I'm done because I was gonna give that a legitimate chance, Brit, because this is how naive I was back then. I was like, okay, maybe it was just the Rocka book and maybe the Rebirth book. You know what? I'll give this and by Rebirth book I mean Rebirth Trinity. So I was like, okay, you know what? I'll give it a shot. Maybe it's pretty cool. I'm flipping through this and I'm like, because I got a bunch of Rebirth issues from the dollar bin, mind you. That should tell you something. So I'm flipping through them, and as soon as I read those words, I'm like, F this. Because I'm like, because I can take it if you want to go in a different direction. Fair enough. That's your right. But when you start insulting people, because you're really insulting the fans by insulting what they like. So you know what? I'm done. And you know what's kind of funny? When Rebirth started, that's when I got out of DC for years until I formed Comics League. Because even back then, I could detect the vitriol that they had for me because I like this. So I'm like, you know what? It's not worth it at this point. Then obviously when I formed Comics League and could buy a lot of my books, I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna buy a bunch of New 52. Screw them.
Right. I mean, why would you? The only thing that New 52 said was that it's not your grandfather's comics or your Superman, but they didn't throw like petty jabs within the story.
They didn't say that post-crisis Clark was not real Superman like these people tend to go. And I'm like, oh, real Superman's a coward? Is that what you're telling me? I love bringing that up. I love calling him Coward Superman. I did that on a live stream when I was talking about Super Sons, and I was like, oh, it's Coward Superman. They all laugh because that's kind of my thing. So
Right.
we get to the fortress, and I love how Tony Daniel draws the fortress, how it looks like the Donner fortress, but it's sort of upgraded with like Clark's little zoo. And interesting how they reveal what those actually are. They're not like cages, they're like shipping containers. More on that later. Then we find out what Diana actually got Clark for Christmas. And this teared me up a little bit when I first read this, because I'm like, of all, it's like basically saying, what do you get for the man who has everything? And she actually
Exactly.
says that there. And it's like, she goes, no, time. I got you time off from being Superman. They'll handle it. It's just you and me. And I'm like, God damn it, Charles, that's the best genius.
Exactly. That is the best. And honestly, just overall, that is the best gift to give anyone of time, of being with your family or being with your significant other. Just anything like that. Yes, everyone wants time as a gift. That is the most precious, priceless gift. Like Superman, he can make diamonds out of coal. He can have anything he wants. But it's true that that is the hardest thing for him to get is time, because he's always, you know, running, whether it is the Daily Planet or, well, at this time, the blog with Cat, but or it is saving the world. So yeah, that was a very good gift. And of course, no, this not what I don't think this is something that Lois, you know, could have
No,
thought of either.
she couldn't, because she only thinks of like the Clark side. And again, I just love it because it's one of those things where, like, yeah, she really knows him very well. And she goes, it's supposed to be something you couldn't easily get. Like you said, time. There you go. And then we find out, I like the way they do it, like his super hearing. Now the world knows that they're together. And then I like where you can kind of tell they're overwhelmed that everyone knows that they're together. And then Diana goes, drown them out, just focus on me. And I'm like, well, first off, you are very easy to focus on, so there you go. But again, what you could say is that's Diana grounding Clark, huh?
Oh, yeah, that okay, now that actually makes more sense than trying to ground him as in he's going to go insane or something like that. This is
Yeah,
more so
you really think he's that close to being a Justice Superman?
right.
Which in
And
itself doesn't make sense, but that's another episode.
and actually with this setup of, their faces being so close, there is a unpublished um page from Tony of them actually in bed. And I think that this
Oh,
is, yeah, and I think this is the page that, went unpublished. His ink and everything was going to go to color, but it's the fact that at that time,
is that
it was,
is it an image of them naked in bed?
yeah, and
Okay.
you've seen it,
Yeah.
and it was said that it was too risque. And then, like a couple of years later, um, another artist said that like the editorial thinks that like Superman and Wonder Woman images, whatever, are too sexy.
Well, I'm like, well, thank you.
So,
Actually, that's the nicest thing DC editorial
I
has ever
mean,
said about SuperWonder.
it's kind of like, eh, so when you have those like intimate scenes with other couples, it's kind of like, okay, we can handle that. Like, it's cool. But Clark and Diana, you think it's too sexy, you know, to not have. That's kind of weird. It's like,
Well, I do appreciate that. And then again, they have this conversation where it's all about truth and being our full selves. And she goes, "Be you, be Clark Kent," and then basically investigate, find out what happened. I have some other stuff I got to take care of. And then we have Zod plotting because he's Zod. And then so we have Zod just hanging out in the shipping containers, as we find out. And then he's basically trying to activate the Phantom Zone to bring Feora through. And the reason why this works, and I said this when Talati and I were covering this book, essentially he creates an evil SuperWonder to fight good SuperWonder, and that's why that's so good. And then obviously we see like Aaron Lord celebrating with Kat the whole Superman Wonder Woman reveal. And I love Green Lantern. Man's got no respect for dibs. And I read that and I was like, thank you for calling back to that.
The whole spread is just wonderful. It has the reaction of the world, and it shows how Clark and Diana are very much the celebrity couple, even though they don't want to be. And it is becomes overwhelming even for Diana too, when she understands, what it means to have privacy. But just the reaction from everyone, it really shows the impact of, how people say that this impacts the whole DC universe, whatever. No, this is how you show the actual impact of the DC universe.
Yeah,
And
I love this dude here. He's like, the message boards are going to have a field day.
and
I
again,
also love Apollo. He's like, and not all love is good, Eros. And then Eros goes, if you loved anything besides yourself, Apollo, I might give your opinion some credence. And I'm like, this is so good. See, I love his writing for this. And
love
then
how Eros.
Yeah, go ahead.
Love how Eros is basically like Clark and Diana's other wingman.
Yeah.
Know?
He's the god wingman. He's the wing god. He's the wing god. And then and then Bruce is the man god. And then I also love where like this one criminal's like, not a bad angle. And I'm like, oh, good Lord. I get it. And then here we go. Steve goes, I'm more concerned about if Superman's going to snap when they break up. And then Amanda Waller goes, you're sure that's going to happen? Steve, it's what she does. It's not her fault, just how she is. And I'm like, you dick.
Yeah, Diana didn't break up with him in a sense of like just being cold-hearted. And that's the thing that so she was cold-hearted with throwing her relationship under the bus about Clark, which he ends up dying, under Rucka's pen. And Steve is okay with that, of course, because by forfeit or whatever that Clark died, Diana goes back to him. But it really shows no relationship build up for them. It's just because by default. And for him to be such a nag and a whiner and think that Diana, he has some type of control over her, this possessiveness. Still, why would you root for Diana to be with somebody like that? And she's supposed to represent, this again,
quality.
And to have her wanting to be with Steve, who doesn't respect her. I see a lot of people who say, well, she's stronger than him, again with the physical strength, or that Steve will do anything for her. He in a sense it is not do anything for her like a romantic thing. It's more of an obsession.
Yeah, to control her.
I don't like that.
It's kind of funny. I just noticed this. The way the cape is flowing, this is clearly an homage to the Batman Hush, Batman Catwoman kiss, because the way the cape is like flowing around them, the way they're posed, and I'm like, touche, kind sir. Touche, kind sir. Again, this, if you're paying attention to this is like a Zack Snyder movie. There's so many references in this that I'm like, oh, this is actually really cool. And then they have a device that I want where you can basically learn anything. And I'm like, I could have used this in school. I really could have used that. I wouldn't have to study for any tests. I'd be done. And then here Lex Luthor is the Clois internet's response. He's like, what? They're gonna take over everything. It's gonna turn into injustice. And the guard was like, what's injustice? Never mind.
Yeah, I mean, that again, Charles really modernized everything from putting in the message boards, now we know that we are in the the time of the internet, that everyone uses the internet. Stop with the paper, with with that. And then also just the hint of even the LGBT Q representation of that little side of the fan
Yeah.
saying I'm jealous, and it says I'm jealous of both of them.
Yeah.
That little thing, that is how you naturally bring
Yes.
in the modern world. You don't just throw it in anyone's face. It has to be something that makes sense for that moment. With this relationship, yeah, could it have been better of building up a little bit more? Yeah, but it was in the Justice League book, and Jeff Johns, it seemed like more his book was to set up things, and if it
To a
spun out,
degree.
yeah,
And here's the thing. They were, you could argue they were kind of set, like the relationship doesn't officially start until after Throne of Atlantis, you could argue. So
exactly.
they do have a lot of build up for that, particularly when you get to the Throne of Atlantis like arc storyline there.
Right. And then even with this book, I'm pretty sure like what Charles would have had was going back and filling in the blanks of what we needed more of, because it seemed like he really, if he already wanted to have references back to other books in earlier times, like with Clark being captured by the government and stuff, then you would see, we would have probably had way better than freaking Tomasi of their first meeting,
Oh
and
yeah,
went
that
on from
BS.
there.
We'll be talking about that when we get to volume 3, because here's what people don't realize. We're going to cover every volume of this, and when we get to 3 through 5, I may have to bleep every time Brit speaks. So
Yeah,
here we go. Well,
definitely.
and then we get Batman being a wing bro, and then he takes out the TVs that are talking about Superman and Wonder Woman, and I'm like, yeah, Batman's pretty cool. He's a buddy. And then I love this. I love where Diana shows up to Hesh's class, and Hesh is such a mean person. She goes, I want you to pay attention to what Diana's going to say. She's going to say something very profound that's going to stick with you forever. And Diana's like, I love, again, I love the humor in this book. It's just so good.
Yeah, it's
And
the
then they
fact that
fight.
right, it's the fact that Diana was put on the spot. It was kind of like, I come to you, to talk about my guy issues, and you just
It was
put me
just,
on the spot to give a pep talk. It's like, you know, but that pep talk was really good. And again, Charles, he really nails Diana's characterization for New 52. Again, the detractors, a lot of people say she's just a bloodthirsty warrior, and the relationship with Clark made it more so. No, if you read their book, Diana is very well balanced. She's not swinging a sword in every issue. She's only using the sword when it mattered. And honestly, we don't really have much of fighting within um too much. Like I said, it's all balanced out. So
yes.
with anyone who says that it's just an action book or it's just a romance, no, it's both. And
Thank
it
you for
is
telling me you didn't read the book.
exactly. And again, it's not just a book reading letters and words. It is a visual. So honestly, if you don't understand the visual, I mean, I don't know what else to say.
Yeah, exactly. And then we get to the next one. We see Feora, and again, that's super awesome image of Feora and like the bloody cape and everything. It's so good. And then Diana goes home to to Themyscira, and I like the visual image of her taking off her boots, her feet's in the sand, and then I love this conversation because you can tell she's kind of having doubts about her and Clark because of the whole secret identity thing. And she goes, he wants me to go places. I don't know if I can go there. And it's one of those things. It's all part of their character arcs, but I really like this idea here, and it's actually a good way to like have her go to her mother for air quotes advice. even though her mom's a statue.
Right. And also going back to issue 4, there was an issue, quote unquote, of that Diana wasn't in the issue too much. And of course, everyone is dissecting this book as in, is Diana going to have the respect that, she deserves? And she does. The thing is that was really profound with that is that Diana's monologue of her talking about her and Clark, she is of old myth and Clark is of new. And it's basically like they are of different worlds, but with everything that's going on, they can still, come together and work together to, you know, do what they have to do. And if they can't, you know, do this alone, it's kind of like what else can you have? And that is the thing, that if they don't have each other, they are alone. You can put Clark with Lois, but he still doesn't have that person that actually understands his Kryptonian side, all of him as the man that he is. So he is like hell bent on just being Clark Kent and trying to be this regular human, neglecting who he actually is. And again, that is how you get the unhinged ticking time bomb of injustice, because he's so focused on being human and, you know, being handheld by Lois, that he forgets. And that is pretty much when he isn't grounded to me.
Mm-hmm.
Then with Diana, it's basically like how you got 1984 is when,
God.
with the whole, Steve is the first guy she meets. Within a week or so, within the first movie, it was like a week of knowing him. That's not true love or whatever. She's not a Disney princess. So for her whole thing of just being heartbroken or whatever, or never finding love over this guy that's
Being
she only
depressed
known a
for
week.
centuries.
Yeah. And then she did and the idea that she needed a guy to show her what love is, no, Diana is the embodiment of love. So that is wrong. Then for her to say that she left humanity for Steve, like because he died, she had no purpose, even that is just stupid. So yeah, Lois and Steve are basically the liabilities, and it really throws Clark and Diana under the bus. With this book, we see that Clark and Diana are having these conflicts, these inner conflicts with themselves, trying to find themselves, trying to understand their relationship, because what their relationship provides is that gray area that they don't, that's glossed over. And now with this relationship, and with this relationship, they actually have to acknowledge that.
Yes,
And
and
with
I love it.
Diana, she is she's always had this perspective. And now that she's with Clark, and her feelings of wanting to be with him, wanting to, learn more of his world and the perspective, it's also making her afraid. And it feels like with falling in love, with actually, questioning that, it's kind of like, I don't want to seem weak, you know. And
Mhm.
and as a woman, yes, that's true. You don't want to fall in love too fast. You don't want to give your all, your trust, because you don't want to be heartbroken. You don't want to seem weak, or, something like that. So that is a very modern, resonating conflict that a woman would have. And yeah, it's very heartbreaking that Diana can't go to her mother for advice.
Yeah, and then we cut to the Fortress of Solitude, and Zod takes Feora out into the sun so they can heal. Diana finds like a like a monster has escaped the Themyscira. She fights it, and then she beats it and has to tie the doors closed with the lasso. This will be important later. And then again, inspired by Man of Steel. I really appreciate this. I really like that. And then we get again, the reason why this works for Zod and Faora to be like Super Wonder enemies, because for one thing, they can fight Superman and Wonder Woman without any like worry, and because they are basically evil Superman and evil Wonder Woman, so it actually works really well.
Yeah, and to see this whole fight, first of all, like Farrah, she's already, I guess she's possessed or something, so she doesn't really remember Zod. So her just, you know, them fighting and him trying to control, get her, out of her state or whatever. This shows their relationship a little bit too, of how dysfunctional it kind of is. And like they aren't just trying to talk, and they're actually just beating each other up until um Fair remembers who Zod is.
Yeah, and then it's like it's not even a fair fight against Clark because he's fighting two Kryptonians, and then Diana shows up, and then I love when Diana shows up.
And she
She
speaks
first off,
in
she speaks
Kryptonese.
Kryptonian. This is something
Yes.
Lois has never done because Diana knows how important this culture is, and then we get a badass Wonder Woman moment.
I
Zod
mean,
shoots the sword with the heat vision, and then Wonder Woman presses it onto Faora's face and burns her. That is so hardcore.
right. I mean, Diana, not only does she speak the language, but she basically like threatens them in the language and then beats you up. I mean, that is such like, again, if you think that this book was just Superman and his girlfriend, no, this is very much balanced. This is very much, honestly, now that we're going over it, it's pretty much a Wonder Woman book though, because Diana has more moments kind
Yeah.
of that really stands out, and
Or you
the
know
fact
what?
that
It's a Superman and Wonder Woman book. That's the beauty of it.
yeah, and I think that what Charles, of course, is like, I think it was alphabetized, but also like the top billing. I mean, they both got the top billing or whatever, but even he said that he would switch the title to Wonder Woman and Superman. I mean, that kind of not flows
It
well.
doesn't. They put Superman in front because, as we learned with Jay Heat last week, Superman is the stronger IP, so that could also be why they wanted to start with Superman. So, but you know what's interesting about this? I just realized what this is. So it gives equal attention to both because when you think about it, each issue has focus on one of them. Like one was a Superman issue, one was a Wonder Woman issue. This is probably more of a Wonder Woman issue, and a hell of a Wonder Woman issue it is because Wonder Woman like fights and kicks ass, and I love where Superman's like, use the lasso. He goes, if I had it, I would. Now pay attention to your own fight.
Yeah, that, I mean, they sound like an old married couple there. They really do. And it still shows that Diana is teaching him, and they are, he trusts her, and he knows that she can basically, take control of this fight.
Yeah. And you know what's kind of funny? You know what's interesting? This is a common thing. You notice how she never calls him Cal, she calls him Clark. So it's kind of funny how whenever because I have a friend of mine that one of his issues with Superwoman is that she never calls him Clark, and I'm like, well, objectively she doesn't. That's wrong. But in the New 52 book, she calls him only Clark, which I would have liked it if they put Cal in there. And we'll talk about that more at the end of the episode when we talk about what we would change. But I don't know, it's just something I noticed.
Yeah, I love, you know, the balance of Clark and Cal, however Diana, you know, but I lean more on her calling him Cal because it's just, first of all, it's his birth name is amplify showing the significance um of his heritage. And I mean, it just shows that I'm okay with Clark, But yeah, it's just something unique about calling him Cal. And another thing is that when Zod was talking to Clark, I think in issue 5, when he says, "Where's your woman?" and
Oh
uh
yeah,
he compares Diana and Laura, because in the New 52, which I love,
I
that they
love when they
gave
did this.
Laura character and made her the general of the Kryptonian army, and she was also a scientist too, and it was kind of like she was even equal to Jor-El. So it's like, okay, Clark, he dates a warrior that's equal to him. They're both, these heroes. And then it's the same exact thing of Jor-El. But in Rebirth and Post Crisis and every other iteration, you have where Laura is basically like just the crying, wife. She doesn't really have any type of significance, really. It's always, focused on Jor-El.
And
And
yeah, and again, and the Kryptonians are always the emotionless, basically androids, and I'm like, I really hate that.
right, but what New 52 did, they gave Krypton and the Kryptonians so much character and development, and really showing life, that even Clark, he was like 2 years old, I think, in when uh before Krypton exploded. So they had time. He wasn't just a newborn, or he wasn't born out of a matrix or whatever that Byrne did. He was 2 years old. He still had some type of idea, you
Mhm.
know, of his parents, and some type of life, that he could have had. And that's the thing. At least have him on Krypton at 2 to give him some type of feeling. So I can't stand when writers or the fans like, well, he doesn't remember Krypton, or he doesn't know it, so how is he supposed to connect, or how is he supposed to care about it? It's like, no, a lot of kids, refugees or adopted kids, they're sometimes they're taken away from their parents. They have no choice. And Clark's parents, your biological parents, saved you. How can you not care?
Exactly. So continuing on, before we continue on to the next page, there's this funny moment I just noticed again, where I love where they do the whole surrender thing, and then Diana just tosses Feyora aside. She's like,
Exactly.
toss, and you can see Feyora's legs. She's like, whoa.
Yes.
There's so many hilarious.
Great moments.
Yeah, it's so great, and it's kind of humorous in a very tense filled scene. I just love just the one arm. That's just so good. I love that. And then they retreat, and then we get the we're approaching near the conclusion. So Zod and Feor are building a portal to the Phantom Zone because they want to bring their army through. And Clark and Diana have this conversation where I think that this is the turning point of their character arcs, where Clark asks her, "Look, I have to say this because other ways we could die. We're about to face like these powerful Kryptonians and stuff, and all I'm thinking about is keeping you safe instead of protecting Earth. Now I have to ask, do you think we were a better being superheroes before we were together?" And she goes, "First off, if I thought that, we wouldn't be together." And then again, she says, I've been asking myself the same questions, but I came to the same conclusion. We are the each other's shelter from the storm. I wonder where we got the title of our fan fiction from, Brit. You think it was
Right.
from this book? I think it was from this
Yeah,
book.
yeah, I think so.
Yeah, it's really interesting how that works. And then they go to Hephaestus again. I was kind of wishing that Apollo would show up. He sees Superman. He's like, "Nope, I'm out." I would
Right.
absolutely love that. That would be a funny little follow up. It's not like a deal breaker, but I would have liked if that was in there. And then I love where they get these kick ass armored suits, and like Hephaestus's invisible chariots, where the armor basically stores their hits, kind of like Black Panther in the MCU, and they can like release the energy blast. And I'm like, this is just so. He did so many unique things. I also like, if you notice the armored suits, compared them to like Feora's, they look at like a mix of Kryptonian and Greek. So again, mixing the
Yes,
two.
right. And it looked kind of like not only Greek, but like lasso, like because
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
gold. Yeah, it again, you can create so many unique ideas, and I love that Charles calls the, I guess it is in the invisible jet, a
Hmm.
chariot. It just
Hmm.
seems so kind of like old. It would be like old mythology to call it a chariot, and bringing it back in, you know, and using it as a stealth thing. That is so good. And this fight, this Tony's artwork on the fight of the back and forth of them, you know, punching and kicking and even the shadows, you can tell who's who
Hmm.
still. That is how Tony can do shadows but still have so much detail. And I just
Now,
love that page.
I have a question. McFarlane, where the hell are the action figures for this? Because I want them.
Right. Um, actually, Tony, again, deleting things because people have
Stupid
something to
people.
say, but also because I think it was I think because it was after it was greenlit, but then how DC does and they scrap things. I believe that Tony was actually supposed to do a Superman and Wonder Woman um action figure line,
No,
which
come on.
yeah, I really wish I could find that tweet or post because yeah, that was something. And I think later he did do a Wonder Woman like statue. But yeah, it was, I remember vividly seeing Superman and Wonder Woman action figures. And it was like, yeah, the whole idea of Superman and Wonder Woman being a couple, you can pretty much tell that, and we'll go into this, but how this relationship wasn't supposed to be, you know, as prematurely stopped as it was. That
By the way, I want here's a statue idea. This image right here
yes,
of
them
them holding
holding
hands and
hands
then explosion. This is way better than any Lois statue.
again. If this was in an animated movie
Yes. Oh no, live action. So imagine Zack Snyder doing this.
and see the explosion, oh
Yeah.
my God, that would be
It's a collaboration
amazing.
between Zack Snyder and Michael Bay, so you know there's gonna be a crap ton of explosions.
Right.
And then we
And
have Apollo being the a-hole
yeah,
he is,
being very,
empowering up Zod and Feora. And then so Superman and Wonder Woman just go back to the fighting, and then they get beaten and tossed in the reactor. And this is again what is showing why Wonder Woman is so good. By the way, I like this detail because I learned this later. So Wonder Woman's sword is actually kept in an alternate dimension, and she kind of retrieves it with her gauntlets. That's what that is showing right here. So what I like here is that again, image the dialogue has two meanings on this where like her sword can cut atoms but he can see them and he go and then Wonder Woman goes, here is your answer to your question earlier. We can't do this and not together. We are better together. Then he says, I love you. And then Diana says, of course you do. And then explosion. And then I just love this. He wraps her in his cape because he's not sure if she can survive it. That is such a Chad move.
and this is actually, I believe this was an homage of an old art piece, and it's
Hmm.
called The Lovers.
Hmm.
They are holding, I think it was if I'm not mistaken, it was Egyptian that they
Wait,
do.
was that the one of Pompeii with the volcano?
Um, let me. I will have to look that up. Let me see.
Yeah, hang on. But yeah, it's actually a really cool it's actually a really cool image there.
And yeah, the again with Apollo being bitter and charging up Zod and Feora, and then that was really a cheater's move. I mean,
Yeah, I'm
that
like,
was,
you a-hole, dude.
and then the fact of again showing Clark and Diana's teamwork of that her sword can split an atom, which is a reference to Kingdom Come because Diana does state that her sword can split an atom there. I believe that was the first time too that she says that. Um,
Mhm.
and the fact that Clark can see it so he can guide her, and they, and again, they are willing to sacrifice their lives to save the world together with no hesitation. Even when Diana asks about surviving, it's still the fact of we're gonna do this anyway, and we're gonna do this together.
Yeah, and I love this. And then we get this cool image of them like hanging out. They probably just stopped like Dark Side from invading or something like that, and they're like flying, but they're so obviously in love. They're like staring at each other. I would have loved if like there was another panel where they like fly into a wall because they're just staring at each other and they like lose awareness. Like, oh, okay, well, this is awkward. And then we get a flashback. And it's like she wakes up and it's like he's like out and it's like, what have we done? We just set up a nuclear explosion. Don't worry, everyone's fine. And then what Wonder Woman does is she goes, I have to like make the sun come out. And she does that. And then you see some good ghosts from the Phantom Zone. He sees Diana being hurt and Clark obviously heat visions because you're hurting his girlfriend. And then here's a cool detail. Clark is so like messed up that the sun actually burns him. So they have to be, and this is actually a really genius way. He just told her, I love you, but I have to be away from you so we can both heal and not die.
Yeah, that, and again with the monologue, the beginning monologues of that of them flying together. He's saying, and they're basically saying, how can this be hard? Like we survived that, and we have to heal, but the fact that we can see each other still, and the fact of Diana also he you saying those three words, for the first time. It's like the next step of a relationship is that yeah, we are going to be serious.
Yeah, exactly. And then she even says, she even tries to make herself say it back, but again, she's not used to it. So again, it's like you're seeing a little bit of like what makes them different, but what also makes them similar. Unlike what some fans on Twitter say when they say they're all alike. And then I like
And
again how actually, yeah, go ahead.
oh, I was gonna say, and again, for Rucker to say that Diana isn't good with romance, it wasn't the fact of like she just is cold hearted. I'm just going to like date these guys without no feelings type thing. It was it, with her here saying that she, with saying I love you. She grew up with the Amazons of like still shielding, her heart. And the fact of being in a romantic relationship though with a guy that of man's world, and the history with the Amazons in man's world of how they were abused and enslaved and stuff like that. So you still can't, even though Diana trusts Clark, it's still the fact of that history though, regardless, that's still there.
Yeah.
And so that makes sense of why she loves him. Yeah, you can see it in her actions, but to say it is still a little bit difficult. But that doesn't mean that she's not good with romance, because obviously she's she's still very serious about him. You know, the fact that she does have these thoughts about him that she's never had with anyone else, not even with Steve.
Exactly. Suck it, Steve. And then so they both are healing. Then we get Doomsday breaking out again, which that's gonna set up something in the volume 2, which we'll cover next week. But okay, this part's infuriating, and here's why. This is what I point to when I read the Tomasi book, and Clark is all pissy that she's the god of war.
Right.
I'm like, this is how I know he didn't read the previous book, because literally they address it at the end of volume 1. Now you could say, well, it was because she kept the secret from him. He never mentioned that there. Don't stop trying to let me put it this way. If you have to change stuff to make your story make sense, your story sucks.
Exactly. And again, Clark did not have an issue. I mean, he actually thought it was cool, and then he wanted to know exactly what that meant. And Diana, she says, being the goddess of war, it wasn't about creating war. She wanted to use it to stop it, to like completely stop it or just prevent it. And basically being, in a sense, the goddess of peace, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So
and she kind of does that at the end of volume 2.
Yeah, and for Tomasi to change that of, like you said, Clark getting mad about it, and Diana for her to be that, in a sense, bloodthirsty warrior type, like just because she's the goddess of war means that she has to fight, you know. No, that's not what was set up. Even um in the Wonder Woman solo book, when she became the goddess of war, she was not, it was no depiction at all about being a bloodthirsty warrior.
Nope.
The only person who set that up was Tomasi. And the fact that so many people still like hate on New 52 Wonder Woman when, yeah, her solo book wasn't, it was more
I gotta be honest.
mythology.
It got better when the Finches got on the book, because they brought it into the DC universe pretty much.
Yeah, what Azzarello, what he wanted to do was he wanted this isolated story. And I believe, just like with, what's funny is Rebirth, of how wanting Diana to be like thousands of years old, and set her book in, like, I think not even World War One, or it was two. I believe it was two. So I mean, they've been trying to have Diana basically old as dirt forever, and it's kind of like it
In the
doesn't
movie,
work.
it was World War One.
Yeah, so with New 52, I think it was, as he wanted two, but they wanted her in a modern world, which of course it makes sense. She's 23. So, and in universe, I believe when Rebirth starts and when Clark died, her Clark died, she was 28. So they were together like real time for 5 years. And, you know, I really wish we could have saw that a little bit more.
Well, again, the book would have gone on had DC
Exactly.
not been wusses. So then they decide, okay, so we're basically on vacation. Where do you want to go, Diana? And then Diana takes him to what's obviously to a location that was obviously in a Tonight chapter. Yeah, it's kind of funny. As soon as I read that chapter, I was like, I know exactly where they are. There you go. And then I love Floyd's words. He goes, that I've never seen her take anyone in here. That woman's a goddess, right? And then Clark goes, you have no idea how true that is, bro.
And then it's the fact that he knows that Diana doesn't usually like have dates, and that she's by herself. She doesn't, she loves dancing and she wants to be alone, and also until she has Clark. And with the whole grounding thing of Clark and Diana being above humanity, or that these two gods together. Okay, would two gods go night clubbing?
No,
You know,
they would not.
like all Diana wanted to do was go dancing. That's it. How, mm, um, like, what more do you want as to show that these two are human? The only thing that I always say is that um they're very much human, quote unquote. It's just that their relationship is on a grander scale. That if they wanted to, and Grant Morrison said the same thing. Clark, he's Paul Bunyan level. It's that he does the same thing any normal person does. He walks his dog, walks Crypto, but Crypto and Clark, they can fly and they can go to outer space for the dog walk. Clark, he can, if he and Diana wanted to go out to dinner. They can go across the world and back, for dinner or something like that. Or yeah, go out to London and go dancing and then go back to Metropolis or something like that. They can do, or the Darwin Cook, I think it was the variant for issue 14 of them having a picnic, and it looks very otherworldly. They can have a picnic on another planet, but they're still having a picnic. That is how you bring realism and the fantastical of these characters together. And it still makes sense, it's very entertaining, but in some way it still resonates too. So, what's
Yeah.
the problem?
Well, DC caters to Twitter fans and all that stuff, so that's the
Right.
problem. So
Oh,
they
I
date.
sent you.
Oh, yeah, I'll pull that up as soon as we're done here. But
Yeah.
then so they dance and they have this conversation, and they're basically saying, "Let's enjoy this while we can, because Lord knows the world does not exhale." And then Doomsday pops out of the ocean, and the book ends. And first off, I love all these fantastic variant covers,
Variant
particularly
covers.
this one because it's like a Greek tragedy.
Right. Again, you can blend in their worlds together. Clark fits right in with the aesthetic. And again, this should have been an animated movie. I mean, how can to end the movie with them dancing and being in a nightclub? It's you can take out the Doomsday part and just
That
have
could
it
be the
end
post
with
credit.
yeah, but just ending with them dancing is just so cool and
Yeah.
shows how these heroes have a very ordinary but extraordinary life.
And then we get the stereotypical romance cover, which I love. And then Clark's like, "Hey, can I have my cape back?" And then we get the little chibi
Scribble
version with the little
knots.
heart. Yeah, I love that. That's great. And then we get the steampunk, and I like the steampunk design of Wonder Woman actually.
Diana, first of all, Diana looks like she's very much teasing Clark. Like she brought like luggage of different weapons or
Mm-hmm.
something, and she has Clark carrying them just for, no reason. She just wants to see him like carry all of these uh briefcases or whatever. And then you have
Yeah.
the robot chicken, which is funny.
Yeah, the Mad Magazine one, and then we get the cool Gatefold one that I have signed by Charles Soule. I love this one so much. The Tony Daniel cover, and is that it? Well, that's how it looks on the Wonder Woman side all the way, I believe, and
Yeah,
then
that's
we're
the
done. Whew, that's a big book. You know, it's kind of funny. A lot happens in that book.
yeah, a lot happens where it can be a full hour and 30 minutes or whatever movie, that whether it's live action or animated. I mean, it's so bombastic with, like I said, it's very much a blend and balance of the romance and the action and understanding the characters. And you see the inner conflicts that they have as individuals and as a couple, and how do they bring it all together to make their relationship and being heroes work.
Mhm.
And a lot of times, especially when you have the hero and the villain, that that whole trope is to the hero has to, choose which way more than the other, or instead of having it as equals. With Wonder Woman, like in the 17 movie, how pretty much the movie became more of about Steve Trevor. Even 84 too. It was more about his sacrifice instead of Diana's. He was the ultimate hero in that movie. It felt like, and then even in 1984, which nobody really wants to acknowledge, because
Brit, there is no sequel to Wonder Woman.
then you have, since Superman fans don't want to acknowledge, I can understand Superman Returns, but since they don't want to acknowledge Man of Steel, Superman only had a movie 40 years ago when, it was very campy. It's inspirational for that moment. Christopher, he did have, of that time, that softness and that charm of that time, but it's still 40 years ago. And
Exactly.
the sequel is him basically giving up himself and his powers just to get laid. And that is just
Mhm.
very unheroic.
And then he kills Zod. Funny how that works out.
Right.
So now onto this. So, okay. So a little backup real quick. So what had happened was in post-crisis, DC's sales were in the tanker, so they did and they happened to be in the middle of Flashpoint. This is kind of an interesting thing I learned, is that it wasn't like the Flashpoint was always planned to be the reboot. It's just they happened to be doing Flashpoint, and we're like, actually, you know what? We could use this. Reboot the universe. And then they did that. And what's interesting about it is that one of the things they changed was, how about we take away the marriage to Lois? Thank you, Dan DiDio. And then it was like, okay, well, who's Superman? Who would be logically the other match for Superman? Well, Wonder Woman. And again, I just love all this because even Match.com is like, yeah, they work.
Right. And we went through this, but the creator, or of Match.com, she's, first of all, she's a doctor, or a family doctor. She uh a marriage counselor as well, and she actually did a whole write-up, which I think I shared,
Mm-hmm.
or we shared a few episodes ago, and she explains it in a scientific way of how Superman and Wonder Woman match. And she analyzed that their backgrounds, even though they are different backgrounds, it's still the fact that they are like outsiders, that they are the, refugee, Clark being the refugee of, alien, whatever, and Diana being the immigrant from the mascara. So it comes together because they understand that feeling. And for a marriage counselor and a family doctor, to understand that and say, yeah, these two are a perfect match. I'm not
Yeah.
understanding why is it so hard for DC to, have a difficult time with writing this relationship. And the fact that they actually asked her as a consultant for this relationship during New
Wow.
52.
Well,
So yeah, it's like, DC, what did you do? Like, if you had a
Twitter.
consultant, yeah, if you had a consultant to understand this relationship, how to go about it, and she gave you a whole write-up and you still didn't follow it, it's kind of like, okay, the incompetence is very much on your part. And that was the thing that I also, wanted to emphasize last episode, was that it's not the concept. Because as we going through this the book, volume 1 today, and how Charles, I believe he was an immigration lawyer too.
Mhm.
So again, you have to have the writers that know and understand the perspective of an immigrant and an outsider. How do they actually feel? And if you don't have that type of um, empathy or sympathy towards that, you won't understand. And you would be like Tomasi and feel intimidated and try to rewrite to fit the this sort of
Tom King.
narrative. Yeah, or Tom King, or yeah, how Dan Jurgens or John Byrne, how, because he had an issue, John being an immigrant himself, he basically self-inserted his idea that he wanted to reject being an immigrant. So Clark, he rejected being a refugee immigrant, and you know was basically hell bent on, no, I'm this American, I'm just a human boy, basically like Pinocchio or something. And you you lose the character, you lose the the reasoning, the purpose, and resonating with an audience, a diverse audience. Because yeah,
Mhm.
your audience is not just Americans, it's worldwide, of different cultures. And for you to have these characters reject these other cultures, their own culture, it sends, you know, a, a wrong message to children of different cultures. And it makes them
Exactly.
feel, and it also makes them feel like, okay, if I'm an outsider, that is what I have. In order for me to feel something, you really shouldn't. You're supposed to be, you know, proud of who you are. But because you want this acceptance from other people and you forget who you are, you reject yourself, and then that really does something. And they don't, of course, they wouldn't show this, but it's a mental and emotional, um, it hurts, you know.
It does. And,
And
and that's another reason why the lowest thing really, you think about it, doesn't work. But speaking of things that do work, so Diane Nielsen is the former head of DC Entertainment, and first off, she's a hardcore Wonder Woman fan, and she wanted Wonder Woman to be like at the forefront for once, which makes sense because Wonder Woman typically has not been at the forefront, and the relationship was going to really be a significant factor into that, apparently.
yeah, Jeff Johns and Jim Lee. Okay, so Jim, it was basically like, if we're going to not only get rid of the marriage, but also if we're gonna do a reboot, let's do something different. It's to make new opportunities. And the first idea, yeah, was Superman and Wonder Woman. And Diane, she was a big fan of Wonder Woman, and it made sense for the relationship. And you can tell the power change, or the editorial leadership change, because how Wonder Woman is being treated now with
Mhm.
New 52. A lot of people saying it damaged her. No, Diana was pretty much at the forefront, and you can feel that at every turn. But now, especially with Rebirth, when it first started, she really, her book and everything just torpedoed. um and you don't have to like the changes of her origin, because yeah, it is controversial. It was about Zeus, but they wanted the whole gods drama. But Diana was still Diana. She wasn't Perez happy go lucky Diana, but she was still, you felt that um still that sunshine energy. at some points.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's part of, again, why I like the new 52, because yeah, they aged everyone down, but they also gave them more of an attitude where they were still their characters, but they were still a little cynical per se, instead of like being like this, oh gee, Willikers, Batman the Joker escaped. Instead it's like, oh my gosh, the Joker escaped, let's go take care of this. Jeez, if that makes sense. It's one of those things where I was like, okay, I can relate to these characters more.
Right. And again, some Superman fans, they think that he is from 1986 reboot, like Golden Age doesn't exist. And honestly, they will have a hissy fit if you do. The fact that they had a hissy fit and called New 52 Superman not the real Superman because he had that sort of swagger and that edge, and like they had an issue with the fact that he, had the corrupted uh businessman dangling off the patio or
That's
the
the way
balcony or
Superman
whatever.
was in the Golden Age.
Exactly. And for them to have a fit over that, it's kind of like, okay, yeah, you really don't know this character because this is the real character, but you want him to be soft. You want him to basically plead to these corrupted people for what is he supposed to do? He's supposed to just slap them on the wrist or whatever, or what John Byrne did. He was basically a cop, and it there is a panel that ironically post-crisis fans they repost and say how they don't like post-crisis, but at the same time they act like that's the gospel, and he is turning down a radio, and it's like, how lame can you be turning
Mhm.
down a radio and saying, keep the music down or whatever? It's kind of like, so you would, in a sense, police uh, a radio volume, but Superman, he can't like threaten, or even though he's not gonna kill him, but if he beats up you know, corrupted cops or corrupted businessman, it's a problem.
He
And
doesn't
I'm
even
like,
beat him up, because obviously if he beat him up, the dude's head would be on Mars.
well, yeah, but still, it's still the fact that their complaints are just it doesn't really make sense, and it's such hypocrisy and double standards because then and then to say that Superman is like Batman when first off the reason for Batman was because of Superman. You
Yeah.
know, and Batman's kind of like more vigilante, like outlaw type attitude was from Golden Age Superman. So basically, what made what made Batman popular today was what Superman was in the first place. That could have made him popular again, or what made him the champion of the oppressed. And the fact that the New 52 brought back that title as the champion of the oppressed with the jeans and tee, and that still was not like accepted, really shows how the Superman fans, they aren't Superman fans. They aren't, they like this idea of just a poster boy of these American ideals that are very, like I said, it's very xenophobic and racist, um and just like this acceptance of American values that are very problematic.
And that really aren't even American values in a sense. But anyway, then we get Diane Nelson. You may be wondering, Jared, how did this book sell? Well, here's a chart that I reference every single episode that
Exactly, because we
features
have to.
yeah, because I have to, because this is what matters, not what Twitter wants, what actually, when the book is actually bought. Now, what you can see here, so here's Superman, Wonder Woman, here's the Rebirth Trinity, and here's Coward Superman. Yes, I'm calling it that. So starting off, we have the first, and these are pre-orders, correct, Brit?
Right, pre-orders.
Yeah, so we have pre-orders. So 94,000 pre-orders, not bad. Then it drops to 60,000. Yes, it does have sort of a drop, but the thing about it is that after that, like, third issue, it's not that severe of a drop, and then it even goes up and down and up and down. See, the thing about it is that this is healthier than this and Super Sons, because this has more of like an up and down, up and down, up and down thing. Plus, you could say issue number 1 sold a lot because of speculators, because Superman and Wonder Woman. So that could explain the 94,000. Where when you look at Rebirth Trinity, it's a severe drop. And then Superman, Lois, and Clark, for a book that everyone claims what the fans wanted. Why does this only sell 35,000? That is piss poor sales.
Right. And we're back, I think.
Okay. Now we're back. So as you were saying.
So what I was saying was, the second issue always cuts in half. Mm-hmm. And so that actually wasn't as bad, because the New 52 reboot was like, let's see, you have 2011. It was 2 years in. Mm-hmm. And you also have the detractors of, the whole controversy of thinking that this book wasn't going to sell. And, even the retailers kind of underselling the book as well. But the fact that it did have as many pre-orders and
actual sales,
printings, sorry,
mm-hmm.
the second printings, and even with the variant covers, it's not as many as it has now. Like now they have, I think it's open order, they have like these other special kind of initiatives for variant covers, plus the 15 other variant covers that they have. And
plus the 40 additional ones that are based on cosplayers.
Yeah. Yeah. So you have all of this, and they had the difference between New 52 and Rebirth is the initiative that they had was being of shiny new number 1s and then returnability. New 52 as a whole, I don't think had the luxury of that, and especially Superman and Wonder Woman didn't have the luxury of that. So yeah, the idea that the pre-orders were 94 and then succeeded even the actual sales of over 100K. And for a Trinity book that was supposed to, of course, you take away Superman and Wonder Woman and Batman and Superman and try to combine it or whatever, but obviously that didn't work because Batman fans aren't going to read a Trinity book. And Superman and Wonder Woman fans, I mean, it really depends, but you aren't going to get the much of a support for the Trinity book. And so that flopped on its own. And also trying to bring in, New 52, Wonder Woman and Batman with post-crisis Superman, that honestly, that wasn't going to work anyway. So it's not really a Trinity. Then, yeah, with the Convergence book, they were very much overselling at this time. I mean, from the whole original power couple thing, the unbreakable relationship, bringing in John, and all of that. Yeah, it wasn't going to work. And Chloe's fans really showing that they talk a lot on Twitter X, but they do not put their money, where their mouth is.
Big surprise. Or they pirated the book. That's probably what happened, but
yeah.
Still.
And even the retailers, they were very surprised at the lack of sales.
Even the Rebirth Superman book by Tomasi didn't sell well. And I said, here's part of the reason why. Tomasi is not the sales juggernaut that DC thought he was. By that, if he were, his copies of Superman and Wonder Woman would have sold more. His copies of Superman, Lois, and Clark would have sold more. Was that him or Jurgens?
That was Jurgens.
Okay, well, his copy, his Superman book that was heavily featuring John would have sold. So it's like, if it didn't sell, why is everyone taking this guy's opinion on Superman?
What's even funnier is that now Tomasi's Superman run is actually like aging poorly. Like the fans are now seeing how it's bland, and the I guess the I'm trying to say, he really tried the overselling basically of this
Mhm.
nuclear family, of this, again with the whole America is great kind of thing. And it was too much. And especially for Clark. Yeah, you want to see, because there are older Superman fans that want to live vicariously through the character, and they want to, you know, um have this idea of Superman being like a father figure for them, or or think of themselves as the father to their sons or whatever. You can
Mhm.
do that, but you can't just, I mean, that at a point that becomes too much of like old man get off my lawn type thing, and
Mhm.
you aren't getting the young fans. You aren't getting that. And they wanted John to be that, we're bringing in new fans, younger fans, and you really didn't get the new fans that you
And
wanted.
you
It was
still
more
don't.
balanced.
You
Yeah.
still don't. But speaking of bringing in those numbers, then Tony Daniel posted a certain tweet. I'm gonna read it out loud. So Superman Wonder Woman broke 100,000 100,000 sales, and there's already lots of reorders. So you're telling me this book wasn't popular?
Yeah. It again, it's a lot of revisionisms, and just pretty much like all things, the truth and positivity doesn't spread like the lies and the negativity, because
Exactly.
so
And fun
many
fact,
people.
the first time I saw this, I did a video analyzing the sales of Superman and Wonder Woman. This is before Brit became a co-host, but she was still helping me from behind the scenes. She's always been my secret weapon.
Yes.
But anyway, as you were saying,
Oh, well, I'll just the fact of, oh, so a lot of the fans, like we said, in Twitter X being like the main thing, but I also see it on Reddit. I also see it on even DC's other platforms like TikTok and Instagram, is that a lot of these fans, which is basically a water is wet type moment, they do not pick up these books. And when you show like some type of history within it, and or the book panels or something like that, you can definitely tell from the comments who do not read a single panel. And
exactly. Real quick,
Other breaking news. Water. Wet.
there you go.
right, but they want to dictate what DC puts out, and DC listens to that, and then the turnover is they don't get the money that they want. They don't
It's the
get
same thing with the sales.
they don't get the support. And it's like, well, duh, because it, I mean, honestly, DC socials, it's only ran by interns, so they aren't going to really. I mean, sometimes the interns even, they like post a panel or something, and then they type out like the wrong issue, and it's
Hmm.
like, honestly, it's kind of like the people working within DC don't know everything about DC. And again, that's when they go back and read and that's when you get the revisionisms and stuff. Like with Tom King, he rewrites these characters to fit his narrative or something like that. Or if you reference another story, they might rewrite it like Tomasi did with Clark and Diana's first meeting. It's never a respectable connection like Charles did. And he tried so hard to connect everything and, like I said, be respectful to every other writer, but they didn't give that back. They didn't give that respect back.
Even though,
And
according to Diamond, this was like number 7, the number 7 comic in all of October. It outsold Neil Gaiman's Return to Sandman, and they threw
really,
this away. Yeah, according to Diamond, so Neil Gaiman Return to Sandman, this outsold that. I'm like,
wow.
well,
And
that makes me even more pissed that DC threw this away.
and it was a poll actually that was sent out, I think, on DC's official Reddit, and this book was actually voted as like the number one Superman book.
Yeah,
And the reason why was because it showed the balance of, like, even if you don't like Clark's characterization in any other book, this book balanced it out because, like I
yeah.
said, you did have the humble farm boy that so many people are obsessed with, but you also have that sort of edge and swagger that he really needs.
Well, the other
So
thing is, like, even if you don't like his characterization of Superman, if you think he's kind of an a-hole, this was classic Superman pretty much.
yeah, I still, like I said, most Superman fans, they think that 1986 was when the character was created.
Exactly. And then, so what's cool about with Charles Soule, he said they're both coming at it at the place of, I want to share something of myself with this other person, which is a noble goal, but they're both very different. Yeah, they're not the same, Twitter. They're not the same. And that's really, really, and it definitely comes across when we were reading the book.
Yeah, they want to share this because they know that they do have some things in common. But at the same time, yeah, it shows that they are very different from their background. But that doesn't mean that their relationship doesn't work because they aren't trying to change each other, which, like what Wonderbat fans, they want Diana
Mhm.
to change or nurse Batman to be like this happy person. It's like, no, that's not Batman. He's not happy.
DC
Um,
is never going to let you change Batman, and Diana is no one's night nurse. So
exactly.
this other thing that is said, it's kind of interesting. I would love to send this to Tom King. It says here, because it's a big superhero story featuring 2 DC Comics' most iconic characters, it's tempting and almost habitual to write them as icons, the writer adds. That's how they come across. If you were to see Superman and Wonder Woman, you wouldn't be able to process them as a person. Yeah, exactly. It's like he's kind of giving the futuristic middle finger to, like, Tomasi, who says she demands the spotlight, or Tom King that says I was really intimidated to write her.
Exactly. Um, and again, this is why Charles is such a good writer and why he needs to come back to, because he isn't seeing he sees Clark and Diana as who they are as people, not just Superman and Wonder Woman. And even the fans of if you are a fan of just Clark, he is more than even Clark. He's more than just Superman. He's, you know, trying to compartmentalize these characters is why there's such a divide in the fandom and why these characters are now undefined.
Yeah,
With
exactly.
with Batman, I mean, the whole issue of Bruce Wayne is the mask and Batman is the real person, and then Rucka with the lasso of truth when he retconned their first meeting of
Mm.
him saying he is just Batman. Honestly, I mean, that was just not true. I don't care. It's not true because he's still Bruce Wayne. His childhood was taken away, but he is still Bruce Wayne though. Like he's just traumatized.
Hmm.
Um,
And he always will be that. That's the thing.
right. And then with Clark, that's the only good things that he called himself Clark Kent Kal-El. That was good on Rucker. He got that one good thing, but it's still the fact of most of the time, Rucker, anybody else would just name him Clark. And even Rucker did do that with when Bendis had the whole secret identity being revealed again, and Bruce called him Clark, but Diana called him Cal, and it was kind of like leaning more to Bruce being right of calling him Clark, and Diana calling him Cal made it seem like it's two different people, and it's like no, a name is a name, but it all depends on the person, and he just has a name. Most of us, you know, have you can name someone by their last name, their middle name, or their first name, or you have a nickname. You still answer to whatever name you are given.
Exactly.
So,
It doesn't make your like main name any less you if someone calls you if I call you Brit, that doesn't make your actual name like any little less important.
exactly. So it's kind of like, why are so many people so focused on just a name or just this or the fact that they are not only just using the name, but the association of the name. That if you name him Clark, he's just a farm boy from Kansas. He's a simpleton. He's a himbo or something like that.
Mhm.
If you name him Cal, then he is just an alien without humanity or something like that, which is very disrespectful and, like I said, racist and xenophobic. Because again, if he was raised by the Kents and he chose to be who he is, and then first of all, you are throwing Krypton under the bus. I don't care if Krypton was depicted as like this desolate, cold-hearted place. Obviously, Jor-El and Laura was not that. So
Even a
you are
Man of Steel.
yeah, so you were basically like really throwing them under the bus when they are the ones that wanted the natural birth. They are the ones that tried to change and save Krypton. So to say that calling him by his birth name is like having this bad alien association is just weird to me.
Yeah, exactly. Now, moving on to the art, Tony Daniel, who's always been my favorite, one of my favorite comic artists, even like before this. But he goes, talk about Tony Daniel. He works so hard in those scenes, and to quote Daniel, to convey their emotional responses and interactions with each other, so they're not just cardboard cutouts. Thank you, because exactly as we said throughout when we were going through the book, you can feel the like emotion of the characters. And even he says Superman is still Superman, but if I can catch that vulnerability in a certain moment he might be having with Wonder Woman or vice versa for Wonder Woman with Superman, I'm happy with that.
And he did a very good job because yeah, even if they are Superman and Wonder Woman, you still saw Diana and Clark. Like with anybody who says that they are just gods above humans or think that they are better, like seriously, just throw this volume in their face. Like just smack them a couple of times
Or
with this volume.
make them read Justice League 12 and they tell them they're not gods. Then
Right.
I didn't know this. It won a Stan Lee award.
Yes. And what the funny thing is with this is that this book was, like I said, very um you had the Twitter X fans just really trying to down this book. But the reason for this award is because it resonated with younger people and being in libraries. And I believe there was, if this isn't the Twitter that Tony deactivated, I can probably go through his tweets or Charles, but it showed that in an elementary school, these kids were actually reading the book, or middle
Mhm.
school, but they were so interested, and it was the fact that it was actually young girls that wanted to read this book to
Ah.
see Wonder Woman, and that was the purpose. Not only was, the whole stigma of comics is that it's for boys only,
Or it's
but
for kids.
yeah, but the idea that not only did this book resonate with, yeah, a younger audience being in middle school, or and the fact that it got young girls to want to read too, that says a lot of the how balanced this is. You didn't have to change Superman into this overly romantic type Fabio that so
Mhm.
many, like with the Dean Cain '90s show, or or Superman Returns, or even Donner films, or in comics that they, try to make Superman into Fabio or whatever, and again, that's basically injustice of being overly obsessed with Lois. No, you didn't have to do that. You just had to show a relationship of equals, a natural relationship of, and a partnership,
And
and
that's
it
why,
works.
like, as we mentioned in like the fandom episodes or like the merch, this resonates with couples as well. How many like Super Wonder marriages happen?
Right, exactly. You have, I mean, there has been so many Superman and Wonder Woman themed weddings. There's been so many engagements, proposals, um, maternity, um, and even now with I guess they're Enso rings, but they
Mhm.
are wedding rings. And of course, Enso is advertising Superman and Wonder Woman together. And there was a tweet of, um, he says that he's been with his wife for 40 years and he got those rings for him and his wife. And that was just such a powerful thing to see that, no matter the age or anything, that Superman and Wonder Woman as a couple resonates, you know. And for DC to neglect this concept when it, even when James Tucker said that
Mhm.
Superman and Wonder Woman is just for the younger audience, and it basically was like the younger audience doesn't matter. Obviously, yes, we do matter, because if you don't have a younger audience that grows up to investing in this company or whatever, then you don't have, you know, fans. You don't
Yeah, the
have
hobby
that.
dies out. It's kind of
Yeah,
funny. He said that that's the younger fans. How'd that attitude work out for you, Tucker?
exactly.
Yeah.
So
So speaking of that, hang on. Missed opportunities. How about a DCAMU movie with this art style and everything?
I would say with that art style, okay, because it gave me basically 4 flashbacks of how they screwed up this,
Okay.
universe. No, I would say change the style. And honestly, I would think of maybe the Blood of Zeus style.
Ooh, that would be fun, particularly like all the gods and yes, that would be excellent.
Yes,
That's a
honestly,
great idea.
and that's exactly when writing the fix, I actually do have that sort of in my mind. Sometimes, like when I first started, when that first came about,
Mhm.
that style, because of dealing with the gods, that is in my mind.
Or you know what they could do? You know how like they did like Superman, Batman, Apocalypse, where they recreated the Michael Turner art style? They could probably do that with Tony Daniel.
Exactly. I mean, come on. It's with
It's right
Wonder.
there.
And what was also dumb was that Tucker said that Superman movies, like, they didn't sell. So he wanted to take a break from Superman movies because of that. And like the first Superman movie or whatever, you have his Death of Superman is just really like, wow,
Yeah,
dude.
it's like the first Flash movie we ever get in theaters is Flashpoint. Really? You're making the audience think that's all he does. Superman only dies, and that's the only time he's ever been
Yeah,
hopeful. But it's
you're right.
astounding how DC neglects their two most famous superheroes.
Yeah, I mean, this is why Batman is the golden, child, or, you know, the cash cow, because even though Batman, I would say they do repeat storylines like all the
Hush.
time. It's still the fact that it's something about Batman though that can continue on, and there are changes that can work though
Mhm.
for the audience. With Superman and Wonder Woman, it's so stagnant and it's so obvious of the repetition of the same storylines. And also even with Wonder Woman, you continue to see her origin. Like that's all she has is an origin story. And even with Bloodlines, I think like
Well, the first half of that
the,
movie is her origin.
yeah, I was about to say the first half is her origin, and I saw the complaints of that it was like, why are we seeing her origin and you are copying the 2017 movie? And yeah, Tucker didn't take too kind to that. That's pretty much why he didn't acknowledge the movie after it came out. And it was the lowest, I believe it was the lowest selling um animated movie for that universe. So it
Wow.
was like,
It,
yeah, it
it kind of shows you, which I'm kind of happy because of the way they like hand wave away Superman and Wonder Woman. So I'm like, yeah, I'm fine with that. Speaking
yeah.
of hand waving, our last slide of the night. Brit sent me a really fun line by Tomasi that I wanted to share.
Oh yeah.
So I'm going to read a statement by Tomasi, and then Brit, you can react to it. I want to stare hard into the heart of both of these characters and their true love and see what that love means to us, the DC universe and the people of Earth, Tomasi says. Does it pose a danger or a threat? If two people like that are together and in love, where's the drama in that? Where are the repercussions does it have? The minute he lost me when he says, does it pose a danger or a threat?
Beep beep. Beep beep beep.
I should put a couple of bleeps in here when I'm editing this just for fun.
Because I mean, like, he honestly, the way it's worded, it sounds so condescending.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, obviously, it does pose a threat, not to the fact of them being together as in they're going to turn into Injustice version. It's the fact of they're enemies. And like what the first volume showed is that when you put their enemies together, they can create something totally new. You have Apollo, Zod, and Fear, and Apollo charging up those two to where
Mm-hmm.
they were able to beat up Clark and Diana. And they were, if Clark and Diana didn't, make that sacrifice of blowing up the atom, you know, they would have won. And so and then you have sci-fi and mythology. You putting in mythical, you putting that together. And like I said, you're creating something new. You can create different um characters, new villains that combine their weaknesses. At that point, I don't think Diana had a weakness. or that Batman couldn't exploit or whatever. But it's the fact of, I think it was more of an emotional thing, and her weakness could have been mostly from a point of like a challenge um of her emotions, you know,
Yeah.
of the fact that the Amazons were turned into snakes and stuff like that. But in that torment of the gods, and then yeah, the gods challenging Clark because he does seem as maybe he is a god or something, or they feel like, you know, this creature that Apollo called him shouldn't be, you know, on our level or close to our level. But no, Tomasi, he took that and pretty much, you know, it was a slap in the face of how you couldn't, you know, take up the challenge, and you couldn't write this book as, I wouldn't say it's easy, because as well, I would say it's easy for us because we've created a whole universe, you know,
Yeah,
within
out
a
of
matter of,
to give you guys an idea of how Brit and I work, we started with an idea that was supposed to be a 2-chapter storyline, or we have like 5 stories in a universe.
exactly. So if you really care about these characters, is, and the thing is with comparing our world and, you know, whatever Tomasi tried to do with our world, we are taking the stories, yeah, we don't like, and kind of revising them, rewriting them, and making them make sense to the characters instead of the contrived conflict. And that's the thing. Tomasi wanted contrived conflict. He's saying that, oh, if they don't have tension within their first meeting, there's no conflict, no story. No, that's not what you do. You don't make them antagonistic, and basically that is questioning, like, why are they together if they were antagonistic towards each other their first meeting? That doesn't make sense.
Yeah,
And it's
but
not.
by the way, I have a fun thing real quick I want to say. I'm going to reread this, except I'm going to tell you what it really means. Does it pose a threat to Lois?
Oh yeah, that makes
That's what it
sense.
is. But anyway, sorry, I mean to interrupt you. I just wanted to
Oh no,
throw
you're
that out
good.
there. But go on.
Yeah. So his whole thing of the conflict of, it's not like it's not like a Lois and Clark relationship where Lois was being mean to Clark and some reason it is supposed to be some love story. No, that's not Clark and Diana. Clark and Diana's relationship is built on mutual respect and that love, that, you know, that honesty and being happy and never belittling each other and acting antagonistic. And, you know, Tomasi didn't have anything good to say about the relationship. And for someone to tweet out saying that he said that he, you know, wanted to remove the relationship or the romance from the book, it's kind of like, that's the purpose of the book. Why would you? The
That's
main
kind
purpose
of the
of the book.
point of that decision, the New 52.
So when the book started dropping, you know, in sales, it's kind of like, honestly, I just don't understand that mindset of, let's purposely ruin a book that is selling and take away the purpose of the book. Like, we don't want to read the book if they aren't, first of all, if they are antagonistic towards each other, because that's not them. And second, you take away the purpose of the book. There's no point. So just cancel it. And honestly, if if this book was canceled when Charles Soule left, I would rather have that than have had Tomasi uh volume 3 through 5. Like, yeah, just no.
Yeah, yeah, I would rather have that as well, because at least the book will be tainted, which is still isn't, because I consider those books to be Elseworlds in the New 52, so I don't have to deal with that BS anymore. That's just
Right,
me. That's
right.
because a lot of my that's because here's the fun part about the DC multiverse. Any story I don't like, I can shunt off to another universe.
Right. So yeah, I just really with rereading the first volume, yeah, there was a lot of missed opportunity, and um the fact of it's still impactful today because you still have even if the detractors want to say nobody likes Superman, Wonder Woman, but yet you still talk about it every day. So
And
it's
yet the
obviously
sales say otherwise.
exactly. And we still have so many fans. I mean, DC posted, well, on the Superman Instagram, they posted the Throne of Atlantis um, clip of Clark and Diana having their first dinner date and Lois crashes it or whatever. And you see the comments are, I mean, it's polarizing. It is, but you still have that, but that's what you want is that it still
More
creates,
discussion.
yeah, it still creates that discussion of people are interested or yeah, they are going to some dumb stuff or whatever. But you still again have that conversation and people are still going to want to, even if they do hate buy, like Williamson said, there's people are still buying. And
And yeah, I'm like, here's what you guys got to realize. I don't care if the sale if I don't care how many of those sales are hate buying. They were still sustainable enough to keep the book going. I could care less if you keep the book and shred it. That's one of my problems with a lot of comic book YouTubers that hate buy stuff just to bash it. I'm like, you're still supporting the book. What are you doing?
right, like the Spider-Man book, that's like it was like number one for months, but everybody hated it. It's like you're hate buying the book. So how are they supposed to know how much you hate it if you're buying it and it's still number one on the chart? Like you're doing contradicting your own self. If you really hate it, it you wouldn't be buying it and it wouldn't be, as high as it is on the chart. If you loved it, then why is it so low on the chart? Why is it not being supported as so many people praise Chloe? Why has Superman struggled for so long, with like building an audience? The fact that they had the CW show and it only like the debut for it did less than Batwoman and Black Lightning.
Yeah,
And it's kind
exactly.
yeah. And or the fact that comic sales. Superman, even if it is supposed to be all good with Superman and the status quo being married to Lois and having John and the twins that Johnson brought up, even though they aren't nowhere to be found, it's still the fact of if everything is all good, why is Superman's books still like second fiddle to Batman? And I think the Superman books really, you've had these rotating creative teams on Action Comics. Um, Johnson's action was kind of like below the top 50 anyway,
Mhm.
until of course they have the variant covers and the specials. And then the Superman book with Williamson is now dropping. And I believe he is going to leave the book at issue 25 or 30 something. So it's kind of like, yeah, Superman still does not
Watch
have a
them bring
solid.
Soule back to do the Superman book.
Oh my God. If
I don't
they
think they
did,
will, but if they do
no,
that, it's too much of a smart idea, right?
it would be. But then it would be like he needs to honestly just bring them back for Superman and Wonder Woman as a Black Label book. I
I'll
I
take it.
mean, yeah, because at this point, DC needs other books, and you have the world's finest with Mark Waid and Dan Mora with Batman and Superman, and that is pretty much it's teetering, you know. It kind of like it's okay, um, but you want this supposed trinity, but obviously that doesn't work. It's just, superficial things, it's advertisement or whatever. But Superman and Wonder Woman, even if you don't want them to be a couple, you can still show their relationship with a little bit of, that tension in there. But their partnership is what people miss, though. You
And
can
that's why
still
the
show
book
that.
was so good. So,
Yeah.
in conclusion, drop below your thoughts in the comments on Superman, Wonder Woman, and how excited you are for Volume 2, and how much you're dreading 3 through 5. So, Brit, do you have anything you want to tease us with?
Okay, so like I said earlier, what I said before we started is I'm asking my mind, are you done with any changes, with stories or whatever? And it's some
The
things
answer is
that
no.
I have. Well, yeah, it's yes and no. So some stuff is yes, which I'm happy for, so I can go ahead and upload. And then some stuff I'm like, oh my God, like get finalize this so you can. But I'm glad for the patience and the continued support, though, that whenever I'm able to upload, when my brain finalizes an idea, it's just good to have that support. And I can't wait to share those ideas with everyone. But I also can't wait for chapter 2 of our story, because I'm loving the conversations that we are creating for the third book, but all just this of conversations with this story, and how we are basically book 1 is setting up, not only just the story that we want to tell of rewriting Sacrifice, but also setting up for the other books. And so when we talk about a certain scene that we want in the other books, and so it's like, okay, now we have to tie that in with the first book right now. It's like, okay, I want this dialogue, and I'm still trying to get that one good scene or a couple of scenes so you can shed just a couple of tears, because I'm tired of crying.
It takes a lot to get me to cry, Britt. So
Oh my
I
God.
challenge you to do that. I challenge you.
I will try. I will try with the dialogue that I'm working on. I will try, because the many tears I've shed, with the simplest dialogue, it's kind of like, come on now.
Yeah, that's partly. So what's kind of funny is that whenever I send Britt any idea, I'll get back the crying cat gif, and I'm like, I
And
got her.
it's
Nailed
every
it.
time. It's every time. I'm trying to, even if I'm trying to, like, say I'm watching a movie and it's like a comedy, but you bust out crying, and it's like, why are you crying? It's a comedy. Because Jared sent me this dialogue
And then
and
what you
this
don't
scene.
know is that as soon as you send me that emoji, I'm like, cry accomplished.
Oh my gosh. I mean, our collaboration, and yeah, the dialogue, and especially the dialogue that we had today, it's just so good. It's just like the drama is there, and just the emotion that being conveyed in this story. I love it so much. And yeah, it's very, it's a good cry. But yeah, I'm trying to get you back. I want to get you back at some point.
You may not, because you may hate me as soon as you finish recording this, because I got more ideas when we were recording this. So here we go.
God, see.
But anyway, guys, stay heroic. We'll see you in the next one. Remember, Lois Lane is Lois Lane and belongs with General Zod. See you later.